We don't need a bunch of cats in here. Yeah, looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. We need more dogs.
And welcome back to the latest and greatest episode of the Shaving Points podcast. I'm Jayton May, joined as always by my co-host Quentin Crisco, and a very, very special guest tonight helping us break down the Buffalo Bills. We have Anthony Prohaska with us. How are we doing that, boys?
I'm doing good. Anthony, how are you doing tonight?
I'm all right. I'm waiting for like NFL training camp to start. We're almost a month away. There's a lot of like hockey's winding down, basketball's done, but then like the draft is happening. I'm a big soccer guy, so it's cool with the Euros and Copa America, and I'm just riding that soccer wave until training camp starts, roughly like a month from now.
So, I have a question. Are we excited for the preseason still? I feel like a couple of years ago, I used to always kind of get excited. You would see a little bit. You'd get like the dress rehearsal game, which I don't feel like we get anymore. Now with the league ever expanding, we went to 18 games last year was the first year or second year doing it. Anyway, does the preseason do anything for you anymore?
For me, yeah. Like I only
being able to see like the twos and threes and stuff like that, but as an I like it too for that fact, because it's the only time you might get to see the people. But I don't know, I just feel like the excitement's not there like it used to be.
I'm a huge college football dude, and so I watch a ton of college ball. I do a ton of work from a draft perspective for my shows, but also just because I love college football and I kind of would do it anyway, even if I didn't have any shows. So for me, I find value in it because there's like the dudes that they're trotting out on the field in the fourth quarter. I'm like, I
watched him at Western Kentucky.
That's exactly right. Like, yeah.
He was that was the guy I had a 4th round grade on who didn't even get drafted. Yeah.
That's exactly
it. Proved me right, man.
Does it bother you at all that the coaching in it is just like such base coach? Like I feel like you have to just really excel at your position in the preseason. Like they don't really give anybody like the coaching is
no scheming.
Game plan is very much just base offense, base defense, like to where somebody might perform better in a week 1 or a week 2 game if they're running the X position or the Z position or the Y, something like that, compared to they're just running a base offense, like he's maybe the third read or something like that. Does that bother you at all or no?
A little, because I would like to see as much like schematic importance and X's and O's stuff as I could, but also at the same time, like I've just never expected more than that base level vanilla type stuff. Like nobody's trying to show their hand come preseason, and also from an evaluation standpoint, like I get the notion of wanting to just trot somebody out there and be like, let's see how these guys do in these basic level. Like, can you handle the basics? How do you function? And because if you can function in this, imagine what you can function if we are getting creative schematically and we're starting to throw different things at offenses and we put you into more advantageous positions. So I think I've made my peace with it for like a long time. And I also know that in how it plays in conjunction with what's happening in practices and what's happening in camp and how it all ties together. So on the one hand, I do wish everybody was like Brian Flores last year with Minnesota, where he's like, no, I'm running my blitz package on every single down. And
see what we got with these guys.
That's exactly right. Like on one hand, I'm like, oh, that'd be sweet. But on the other hand, I do kind of I understand the kind of vanilla nature of it, and I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Yeah. My only gripe is like there's been, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but certain guys that I'm like, just give them a chance. Then you watch the preseason game and it's like an X receiver and they're just running like go routes the whole time while they run the ball or run slants and stuff like that. That's
the one that always kills me.
They're not even giving this dude a chance. It's like he's 6'4", he's 195 pounds, he runs a 4.4. Like just give him the ball, and they're just basically just throwing him out there to like run a go route. Like,
or you get like
that's what really bugs me.
The safety that checks in that you really like. And all they do is like leave him as the single high post safety, and the offense just runs the ball, and he doesn't get to do anything. And you're like,
he cleans up like 2 or 3 tackles, and you're like,
he just comes into the frame at the end of every play, and you're like, oh, there he is, and it's like,
there he is. Yeah, that's how it was with Deshaun Redd a couple of years ago when the Cowboys drafted him in the 6th round. Could have sworn that dude was going to be a baller.
Yeah, I mean, he had like what, a 7-foot wingspan. Like,
Yeah,
that,
and he was
his
the
arms were so
he was the
long.
prototypical Dan Quinn guy. You're like, this
Yeah.
is the next like Richard Sherman.
Even if
I
he's not
promise
good,
you.
Dan Quinn's gonna give him every chance he can.
Yeah,
He'll get it.
absolutely. But okay, y'all want to anything else you want to talk about before we hop in?
No, I think we jump in on the Buffalo Bills here.
All right.
So, Anthony, when you like, I want to say looking at this graphic, but I know you know this team so well, you don't even need the graphic. But what are some areas that you think this team outside of Josh Allen really can hang their hat on and really feel really strong about with this roster?
Man, that's such a funny question because my go-to answer would have been the offensive line had they not changed anything. And I still kind of feel that way a little bit, even though McGovern moves from left guard to center and then David Edwards is slotted in at left guard. In theory, granted, some of these things could, potentially change depending on what happens in training camp, positively or negatively. But if we're just talking from a pure area of strength, besides Allen, I'm going to the linebacker grouping. I think they reinforce things overall from a depth standpoint. Like, I know Nicholas Morrow isn't the best linebacker, but having a dude that can be your linebacker 3 or 4 with that still level of athleticism and experience that he carries with him, like even just as recent as his snaps in Philly last year, I think helps. And then the overall competition, they bring in Deion Jones. We'll see what happens with Balin Spector. We'll see what happens with Dorian Williams but overall, I think there's some nice competition from a depth perspective in terms of functionality. And then above them, I mean, you've got Matt Milano, who's a legitimate all-pro linebacker, and Terrell Bernard, who I think had a tremendous year last year, that in a season that there was so much going on with the Buffalo Bills offensively. And then defensively, it was guys getting hurt and the storyline with Von Miller. I really think from a national perspective, especially, people have no idea how good Terrell Bernard played last year and how strong of a season he had. I think if he has a season this year like he did last year in terms of that trajectory and that upward swing, you legitimately could be looking at one of the best like linebacker combinations in football. And I know linebacker is not the premium position it used to be, but what they're responsible for in this Bills defense, they're of importance to this defense. And with what Bernard does between the ears from a football IQ standpoint, and then his coverage ability and what he does as a blitzer, I think him and Milano are a real strong 1-2 combination. And then you do have functional depth behind them. You're never going to have all pros as your depth guys, but I think when you look at the group as a whole, there's functional depth throughout it, and then highlighted by 2 really strong players in terms of Bernard and Milano.
Yeah. So I feel. Hold on. I feel like the linebacker, off the ball linebacker. I mean, it's not a paid position, but I feel like the teams that have high play at that position always overperform their overall defense. Is when you look at a defense as a whole, teams that have those highly skilled or just really good linebacker cores always seem to overperform. But for some reason or another, it's just not a very highly valued position. But you can see it on the field whenever they are good.
I was about to ask too. I feel like some of it's gotten very scheme specific, where you were looking at a big shift to like the Fangio schemes a few years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And in those schemes, I felt like there was more ability to kind of hide the linebackers in coverage at times, or hide them in certain areas, maybe against the run, because you have some big monsters in front of them, or whatever they might value. But right now, to me, it feels kind of like there's the teams that are getting to the Super Bowl or near the Super Bowl tend to have some really strong linebacking cores. And part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because McDermott, his scheme, there's some parallels to, my team that I follow, the Bears, to Matt Eberflus's defense, which is very linebacker centric. And the more, like, one of my goals this offseason was to really understand coverages better, because I've always been more of a trench guy. And the more I've been watching the Bears stuff, the more I'm starting to really understand how much pressure these linebackers are able to take off the safeties and the corners because of the space they can eat, especially in the middle of the field. Is that kind of what you see with Sean McDermott's defense, what they're being asked to do, or is there anything more intertwined with it that you think you can get in the weeds in on a little bit?
It's a bit of both. And I think you start with what this Bills defense really has been going back to Leslie Frazier taking over them, and really, now Chicago Bear, former Buffalo Bill Tremaine Edmonds, when it was Edmonds and Milano in there, and Edmonds is such a polarizing dude for Bills fans because everybody, yes, like Bears give him this big contract, and especially after Roquan just goes out the door, and then Roquan goes to Baltimore, keeps balling out, and then you get Tremaine Edmonds, who everything with Edmonds has always been, I mean, you can't even say prototypical size and speed because it's not prototypical. He's a friggin' pterodactyl, like out there on the field, and he moves like a gazelle. It's ridiculous. But his instincts, his ability going forward, it was always inconsistent. It was never really what you wanted, but you looked at him from a coverage standpoint. And the one I'm always going to think of is they're playing the the Chiefs in 2022. I mean, the Bills have played the Chiefs like 95 times the last 4 years. I can't even remember. And Mecole Hardman is in the slot. Mecole Hardman, legitimately one of the fastest players in the league. And he runs a post. And Edmonds turns and carries him and runs with him step for step, 35 yards downfield. And that's absolutely ridiculous. And he would function so much as this deterrent in that Bills defense because of his athleticism, because of his size, because of his wingspan, because of his speed. He would erase and take away so many things that would allow pressure to get home or force an underneath throw, and the Bills defense would rally and tackle. And he would do so many things that wouldn't show up on the raw stat sheet, but were so vitally important to the Bills defense. And I think you continue to see that with these McDermott defenses. But also I think linebacker play in general is starting to come back in terms of importance because now the teams are starting to run the ball again more, and the running game is becoming more important. Now those second-level dudes, and I'm including nickel or apex defenders in that as well, because so many teams run nickel, that second level is under pressure all the time. You have to be physical enough and instinctual enough and with a good enough trigger to come forward and play the run, but you also have to be athletic enough and coverage sound enough to function in a variety of coverages. Are you just playing, spot drop? Are you playing match? Are you playing cover 2? Is it Tampa 2? Are you playing quarters? What's your rules system? There's so much that's asked of these guys. And I think the Bills defense was a good example of it because of all the rules-based nature of their defense and how much of a match coverage defense they were, that, there is a lot asked of these dudes. And for a position I think that kind of gets overlooked, they do go a long way in terms of maybe not necessarily being the splash guys, which Terrell Bernard was more of a splash guy last year for the Bills than Edmonds was, but he played the role a bit differently. I think these guys go a long way towards, like you said, kind of closing off areas of the field or limiting access for offenses. And again, now that the run game is coming in vogue, there's just so much asked of them at that second level.
Yeah. And the thing that I just keep thinking about with it is if your linebacker can cover an extra, 5 square yards of area, that's 5 less square yards that your best athletes on the defense have to worry about, and they get to squeeze less area for them to try to get the football, So these turnover-based defense, I feel like that's how I'm starting to think of the linebackers in these, as they're multipliers out in things that you can't even see or really process out there.
Yeah.
Statistically, and even on tape, it can be hard to see.
I wish I had, I had it in my head for so many years, but you could chart Football Outsiders with Aaron Schatz's DVOA, now it's on FTN Fantasy or whatever it is. But each year with the Bills defense, using the Bills as an example, each year they got better in the middle of the field DVOA each year with Tremaine Edmonds. And by his second last year with the Bills and last year, they were the best in the league. Nothing went over the middle. And then you were looking at the Bills defense. It's okay, now you got to throw to the outside. It's okay, cool. One of those sides is occupied by Tre'Davious White. So you probably don't want to throw to that side. So now you got to throw to the other side, but we kind of know you're going to throw to that side. So now we can kind of funnel that and play strategically off of that. And exactly, I like your point of kind of looking at it from a square footage perspective, and being able to take away those areas of the field allows you to scheme up offenses. And even if you can just take away areas and add half a beat or a quarter of a beat to a quarterback's drop back, the difference in them getting the ball out in 2.5 seconds versus 2.75 because they want to pull the trigger, but they don't, that's a huge amount of time. And so I think that position is starting to become of more importance overall again. And, again, we're still seeing the contracts getting paid out to these dudes with what Fred Warner got, with what Roquan got, and then what Tremaine Edmonds got. And it's a sneaky important position, Granted, it's still dependent on the defensive line, opening things up for them overall. But yeah, if you have good linebacker play, it goes a long way towards kind of pushing you that much farther as a defense.
Yeah, and you get that quarterback to hold the ball an extra few seconds. He's got to deal with Greg Rousseau sooner or later, right? On this defensive line. So I feel like this D line has changed quite a bit over the last few years.
Yeah,
where it's like they've been smaller changes, and it hasn't been quite as noticeable. Because a guy like Ed Oliver's still there. We know Von Miller's still there, but what are you expecting from this
Von Miller still there?
He is still there. Yeah, we'll see what version of Von Miller he is, but he is still there.
Well, when I asked that, it was like, when you say Von Miller, you think like, whoa, Von Miller, but is it still Von Miller, or is it just a washed up edge rusher?
We'll see. I mean, I think last year, his performance last year was disappointing, I would say, but also like I didn't really have a lot of expectations for him. Like the age that he was, coming off the injury that he was coming off of, that same injury he had before in his career. Dudes in general, like the first year coming back from that ACL injury, you're really not yourself. It's usually coming back year 2 that you start to see a semblance of kind of who a player was. And even then it's still asking some. As the year went on, he got better. Granted, it was marginal and it was small increments. And then by the end of the year against Pittsburgh in the playoffs in the wild card round, he's showing some real flashes. And I think having a normal offseason, another year removed from that injury.
Was there a normal offseason?
Well, for him, in terms of like, he doesn't have to worry. It's not a rehab offseason for him. Just gets to, he's just working out and preparing for the season. Granted, it's still probably a little different from workout perspective, but yeah, he doesn't have to worry about rehab. He's just prepping for a season like it's a normal upcoming season. I still think your hope, if you're starting with the edge grouping, you're looking at it, and I think Von Miller, the hope, if he can be like, my expectations or even hope for him is being like an edge 3, maybe a low tier edge 2. I just think it's a lot to ask given his age, where he's at, the type of player that he was and what his skill set was, and now coming off of this injury and just fighting father time. I think it's a lot. Yeah. I don't think you're going to see the Von Miller that he was with the Bills before that injury, which was legitimate, like Von Miller.
Right? I think Von Miller in a rotation, if he can give you 30 pressures and 7 sacks in a season, I think that would be like exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'd take it. If he can push double digits or get close to it, that's cool. But then they're going to need somebody to push that envelope, because Greg Rousseau is one of the best run defending edges in the entire NFL. He's been that way since a rookie. As a rookie, he led all edges in stops and stop percentage. Like, he was tremendous. And he's been banged up the past couple of years.
Like and he was young DeMarcus Lawrence.
Oh, man. Oh, nice comp. And he was so raw coming out of Miami. Like, every snap matters to him. And you see it in the pass rush perspective. Like, he's still putting together plan and moves and transitions, and he knows how to use his length. He's smart and he understands leverage. He's got really good hand usage and hand placement, but you're still kind of looking for him to put it together as a pass rusher. I think he's an edge 1 against the run. I think he's more of like an edge 2 as a pass rusher. Like, you need an edge 1 to play off of him from a pass rush perspective. And that's what's scary about the edge grouping, because you don't have an edge 1 in terms of a pass rusher. Like, if we're just going right down the list here, it's definitely not Casey Tuhill. Like, he's more of like a hustle dude, motor dude who plays the run. AJ Epinesa has flashed and gotten better every single year, and he was starting to really come on last year before he busted his rib against the Chiefs in the regular season, and kind of played, or maybe no, I don't think it was against the Chiefs, and then played banged up. But his hand usage, his technicality, his moves are really starting to show. But still, I think his ceiling this year is probably an edge 2. Dwan Smoot can maybe be fun, and he's another dude coming off of an injury.
His name's Dwan. I'm not familiar. I was really hoping it was Dwayne.
It's always.
I was like, that's the coolest way you could ever. I was like, that's like the coolest way you can spell Dwayne.
I've heard both, and I've watched interviews where people like will be like, I'm here with Dwayne Smoot. And then the next one's like, I'm here with Dewan Smoot. And I'm like, crap. So I'm just going with
Right
Dewan.
when you think you got it.
Right? You don't. Just when you think you're there, you don't. Like
I was just hoping it was Dwayne because I'm like, that is
it
such a
still
cool
might
name to
be.
spell
I would hold
Dwayne.
out hope. You never know. I haven't heard him say his own name. So
I'm a Cowboys fan. If there's one thing I have is hope.
That's all nice. I mean, I'm a Bills fan, so that fits the mold there. And he was sick in 2022, tore his Achilles in week 16. He was a shell of himself last year. He's another year removed. Like, can he be edge 4, whatever for this group? Kingsley Jonathan has some athleticism. You're seeing what he can be. You got Javon Solomon from Troy, who has moves and has plan and has long arms, but is an outlier from a size and weight perspective, very small. Also doesn't really have that inside move that you would like to have at this point, but he does add legitimate juice. Does he make the group? I think if you're looking at the edge grouping, I like the depth they have. I think they have a bunch of like B- and B guys overall, which is cool. They just don't really have any B+ or above dudes. I think Rousseau flirts between a B+ and an A-, but that's it. Like at best, you've got like B guys after him.
If you can get a lot of B guys to work together,
yes, then that's
sometimes
awesome.
that's the best recipe.
Well,
but you also they all have to work in accordance. Also, can y'all hear my dogs?
Vaguely, but not really.
A little bit.
And also, like with I'm almost realizing just how similar Sean McDermott's tendencies might be to like a Matt Eberflus, because I know Flus wants guys on the edge who are going to contain the pocket and pocket pushers in the middle. And they're really just trying to make the quarterback make a decision so they can try to get the football, is what it feels like sometimes. Is that kind of how you feel about what Sean McDermott has built here, where it's like maybe that they're not the, get home sharks like a Von Miller was, but they're guys who are going to be able to push pressure onto that quarterback, even if it's a little slower, while the linebacker in the middle is making the quarterback take an extra second. And he's having to kind of rush a decision, though, at some point to eventually, hopefully, make a bad decision.
That's been kind of their MO, like with McDermott and Bean. They very much have gone for pocket compressors off of the edge. Like Von Miller, Von Miller is an outlier in terms of the archetype they look for at edge. Even Leonard Floyd is an outlier, who had a really strong year for them last year when they brought him in on a one-year deal.
I was watching their tape and I was shocked that was Leonard Floyd. Like I granted, I'd seen him here and there since he left the Bears, but I could not believe how much that guy has progressed in the last few years.
And this is pure assumption from me. Like as the year went on, once you started to get like week 11, 12, 13, he was getting like helped up off the field. He didn't really miss time, but I'm convinced he was banged up. Like he'd make a play and they would have to scrape him up off the ground. And you see it in the stats, like who he was the first half of the year was a game wrecker. And then he slowly kind of disappeared. I think he was playing banged up. And you can see just by the time playoffs come around, he's getting picked up off the turf. But he, again, archetype outlier. Von Miller, archetype outlier. Like they have gravitated towards dudes like Greg Rousseau and even Smoot, like dudes. They're like, no, just go speed to power, go through a dude's chest or his outside shoulder and shrink everything. And we'll kind of take it from there. They don't look for moves type, skill set, speed, bendy, athletic type of dudes. Like even Javon Solomon was an interesting pick. I didn't have him on the Bills' radar at all because he's an undersized guy from a size and weight perspective, and he's a moves guy. He's not a pocket compressor guy. He's moves and speed and bend and dip, and that's not what they gravitated towards. And it's worked overall from defend the run, make teams beat you, try and contain everything, but they haven't necessarily, to your point, like had those dudes that could get home. And then they went out and got Von, and then he got hurt. And you're sitting there looking at this group now, and I think you can look at this group and be confident in them, setting the edge, boxing things in, being those force players. But I don't know where your pass rush comes from for this edge group. And like you're really hoping Greg Rousseau stays healthy and takes a jump, and then you're hoping Von Miller can get close back to who he was pre-injury. You're hoping AJ Epinesa takes a jump. And granted, those things 100% all could happen, but it's a lot of hope. There's not a lot of known quantity where you're like, this dude is this dude is that, we're good to go. And I love the idea of like Like as a hockey fan, like I don't necessarily need a number one line. Give me 4 number 2s, or like give me 3 number 2 lines, and my checking line is actually a number 3 line. I love that depth. I love the versatility. I just don't even know if that's a guarantee with the edge grouping and even with the interior to a degree.
Right. And I think it becomes a lot easier when you feel like, you have someone on the overall D line, notably on the interior, who can get home when he needs to.
Yeah.
Is Ed Oliver that guy for you guys, or do you feel like there's any concerns around him in the way that he plays?
I think the only big concern with him, and I'm looking it up right now because I have these stats, because the stats are nuts, and I always forget. I always tell myself to like save it in a note sheet, and I never do. There it is. So Ed Oliver this past year, amongst 129 qualifying defensive tackles, he was 4th in total pressures, tied for 5th in pass rush productivity, 4th in hurries, and 4th in sacks. Like, he had a monster of a year on the interior. And that's without his running mate, Daquan Jones, being in the lineup for most of the year. He gets hurt early on against Jacksonville. And Daquan Jones was putting together, granted it was a small sample size, but he was putting together an all-pro season last year with what he did against the run, what he was doing as a pass rusher. He was looking tremendous, and it was like, oh my God, look at this 1-2 combo we got. I think Ed Oliver has the ability to game wreck. But what's been unfortunate for him is the past 2 years just kind of disappearing in the playoffs. The Cincinnati loss, I think a lot of it was more coverage based than pass rush based with how much space they were giving Cincinnati on the outside, and it just let Burrow feed into quick game all night and day. But then the Chiefs game, and it's understandable to a degree because Joe Tooney's fantastic. Joe Tooney erased Ed Oliver the entirety of the game. Like, he didn't even
He's pretty good.
He is fantastic, but like, if you're also fantastic, you got to win something every once in a while. And he won nothing. There was no tackles, no pressures, no hurt, like nothing. You didn't even know Ed Oliver was on the field against Kansas City. And granted, I think some of that is also a product of no Terrell Bernard and no Matt Milano, and Rasul Douglas is hurt, and this other guy is hurt, and this, like, their defense was so banged up. AJ Klein, they called off of a friggin' boat on vacation to come start in that game. Like, they had so many injuries, but I think Ed Oliver is a legitimate impact player, and you just need to see it when it counts the most. Because, again, the stats are like, he crushed the regular season, and even that wild card game against Pittsburgh, 7 total pressures. Like, he was all over again. He plays the run, he plays the pass, one gap, penetrator, aggressive. But in the biggest moments when they've really needed him, you haven't seen him step up, and I think that's what's kind of holding him back from, like, being more of that superstar type status.
Yeah. So as a Bills fan, how much does it bother you that when Ed Oliver was in college, he stole a jacket from an active teammate during a cold game when he wasn't playing?
I remember that when it happened, and I was kind of just like,
that's the first thing I think about every time I hear Ed Oliver. They made such a huge deal about it.
The first thing I always think about is he wore number 10 at Houston, and I just thought that was such a baller move for like an interior defensive lineman, like wearing such a cool number.
Looks like an edge rusher out there.
Kind of does. I remember that being talked about too when he came out. There were even people talking about, like, have him lose a little more weight and have him be an inside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. Like, all this versatility and what he could be. He's made nice progress, like, year after year. And I think if you're trying to hang your hat on something on this defensive line overall, it's Greg Rousseau off the edge as a really strong run defender with the possibility to also be a strong pass rusher. Ed Oliver being a monster inside, and Daquan Jones being a monster inside. Like, you're hanging your hat on those 3 dudes, and then you're hoping you just get functionality and usability anywhere from like a B- to a B+ level out of everyone else that you're cobbling together.
Yeah. I just remember, you would have thought Ed Oliver committed like a heinous crime whenever he was wearing that jacket on the
Can't
sidelines.
steal jackets, man. It's bad form, I guess.
Yeah, it was like the number one story on like every sports station for like 3 weeks. Like, can you believe this guy?
You know someone who would never steal their teammate's jacket? That's Mr. Duke himself, Dwayne Carter.
Oh God, pure leadership like that. I remember the what's his face, Graham Barton, who came out for Duke this year, who was a stud. He was in an interview and he got asked, like, I remember this being told to me. He got asked, like, oh, like, talk about your role as a leader on this team. Yeah. And he kind of like stopped the question right there. And he was like, no, like, our team only had one leader, and it was Dwayne Carter. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, damn, that's pretty sweet. And, his record he fits everything from the Bills model, right? From a play style perspective, one gap, penetrator, hustles his ass off, is running downfield, is running dudes down 25 yards downfield on tunnel screens and stuff. And then just, again, like leader, captain, fits the mold for what you want from a culture perspective. And I think that's kind of important considering how much they've lost from a leadership perspective on this team, but especially defensively. Like no Micah Hyde, no Jordan Poyer, no Tre'Davious White. Like you've lost your core leadership group to a degree on the team as a whole, but especially defensively, and they're looking to fill that void. I think Carter slots in as kind of that backup 3-tech behind Ed Oliver. I think you're looking at a top 4 of Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Dwayne Carter, and then the backup 1-tech to Daquan either being Deshaun Williams or Austin Johnson. I'm thinking it's going to be Austin Johnson just based off the tape from last year, which gives them a fine rotation. Like if you're trotting out Austin Johnson as your backup 1 and Dwayne Carter as your backup 3, granted, Dwayne Carter is an unknown quantity because we've never seen him play a snap in the NFL. But again, I think you've got good rotation capability on this defensive line overall. The problem is you don't have that top tier or that top shelf level production or known quantity right now. But it can still work out because if you can get, like you said, like if you get a whole bunch of B- and B dudes, and even if a couple of them hit a B+, that's awesome. Then you can just roll these dudes out and let them stay fresh and go 100 miles an hour 100% of the time. But it would be nice if somebody ascended.
So you agree with Quentin in his words of solid group, but a lot of mid.
Yeah, I think that's like spot on. Solid group, but a lot of mid in the room. Von Miller needs to regain form in some capacity for this D-line to be a strength. I think overall, yeah, you've got functionality and you've got solid play. There's just, you don't have that top tier nature.
Yeah.
You don't have anybody on the defense.
Love that.
Yeah,
I think we lost Anthony for a second.
Full disclosure, you kind of threw me off with that statement because I was like, wait, when did I say that? And I looked down, I see, oh yeah, 2 months ago when I made this graphic, I wrote that.
It's spot on. They don't have anybody. The way that I put it is the defensive line, Ed Oliver is probably the closest to it, but you don't have anybody who can just go get you a bucket. You don't have anybody you're like,
right.
Oh, third down, this guy's going to get a pressure. It's probably Ed Oliver, and I think he's in that conversation right now, but it's not 100% a guarantee. And I think that's what you'd like, especially when you go around looking at a lot of the other teams that you're competing with. Like you look at Cincinnati and like, okay, Trey Hendrickson is there. And then you look at Kansas City and it's like, oh, Chris Jones is there. And then it's like, okay, who's that guy for the Bills? Like It's kind of Ed Oliver. It could be Greg Rousseau. Who knows? Maybe it's both of them this year, but it's still a lot of like wishing and hoping and forecasting or wish casting a little bit than it is.
Those are two pretty big names.
Very true.
Yeah. Let's talk about the defensive backs a little bit before we close out the defense here. So another room where I feel like there's been a lot of change the last few years between was it Darius Williams who left, or was that 2 years, multiple years ago? 2 years.
Levi Wallace was the dude there for years, and then he went to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and then Trey White gone, obviously. Yep. And what do you think about this room now where you're sitting? I feel like, I felt like the depth is a little thin when I look at it, but I do like the 3 starters. Like I feel like that there's quality there. But what are your thoughts on these guys?
If you can guarantee me that the starters are healthy for the entire year at corner, I have no qualms at all. I am very cool with Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, and then Taron Johnson at the nickel. Taron Johnson is one of the best nickels in the entire NFL. He was an all-pro last year. On any given Sunday, it's between him, Kenny Moore, and Mike Hilton in terms of who the best nickel corner is in the NFL. And I'm fine with him being in that conversation. Dude is an absolute dog coming forward against the run. Like he plays the run. He plays the run like he thinks he's Tremaine Edmonds' size. Like he thinks he's 6'4", like 250. And despite the fact that he's like 5'10" and 190, like he just hits like a freight train. He fills, he takes on blockers and pullers. It doesn't matter.
That's what you need to do at nickel though. Right?
That's exactly it.
You got to be fast in that lane. You don't have time to hesitate.
No. And it's so demanding. Like you have to cover that two-way go against a variety of body types now. It's not even like you got to cover a slot receiver. No, teams are putting their number ones inside. Okay, you're playing Minnesota, Justin Jefferson's going to go in there. Oh, you're playing the Rams, Puka's going to go in there. Cooper Kupp's going to go in there. You're playing the Niners, cool. Here comes Debo or Ayuk. Or you know what? We're going to put McCaffrey in the slot, or we're going to put Kittle in the slot. Like That position is so demanding, and it's awesome that the Bills have one of the best in the league at that spot, both from a coverage standpoint and from a fit the run standpoint. And if you need to ever watch tape on it, watch the Bills play the Cowboys and watch Taron Johnson just go one-on-one with CeeDee Lamb and just put clamps on him, like rep after rep, which was, I wasn't even
Don't watch that game.
I'm sorry to do that to you. It was fantastic. So good for Taron with that. Rasul and Benford are really
Talking
sweet.
about the Thanksgiving game?
No, the game last year in Buffalo.
Oh.
Yeah, that body. It wasn't
Still
great.
don't watch that game either.
That's fair. I would say don't watch the losses. Never go back. Benford and Douglas are a sweet corner tandem. Christian Benford is another, I think, maybe the best kept secret in Buffalo. Sixth-round pick out of Villanova.
Surprising me. I usually watch 2 to 3 all 22 games. I try to make them in division so I don't get too much crossover.
Yeah.
But I kept writing his name down when I was watching him. I was like, okay, Christian Benford. I kept noticing him.
So they took Kyrie Elam in the first round in 2022, and then they took Christian Benford in the 6th round. And Kyer was supposed to be kind of the prince that was promised at that corner spot to take over, and it ended up being Christian Benford. And everybody was just like, where the hell did Christian Benford come from? And he gets better every single game. The biggest issue is, he's had injury stuff, fluky kind of stuff. He's not injury prone, but just like a banged up wrist here and there and different like bone injuries. But he's a legitimate CB2 right now. And by the end of the year, he could be a high-end CB2 or a low-tier CB1. Rasul Douglas is as legit as it gets from a veteran perspective. That was a tremendous trade in season for the Bills last year to get him. He was very much every bit of a CB1. My biggest regret was that he was just playing on one leg against Kansas City. Like, he could not stride out. He was just too banged up. If you give me that core and they're healthy all year, Benford, Douglas, and Taron, I'm very happy with it. The issue is corners get banged up all the time, and everything behind them is questionable. And like you have in the notes there, like a little thin behind the starters, but not enough to be concerned. They're okay. I don't have, like, from an outside corner perspective, I don't have a ton of faith in Kyrie Elam. He's still up and down. Then you're looking at Jamarcus Ingram as your corner 4. He's been more of a slot guy, but now he's projected to go to the outside. What does that look like?
Can I ask you this? Can Taron Johnson play outside? Or is that a no?
Probably not. Like,
okay.
I know that's been flirted with. He's just he hasn't really seen a ton of time out there, and he's such a focal point and so important with what he does as that nickel defender. Like, I don't even want to risk like moving him out there. So if something happens to Benford or Douglas, Kyer stepping in or Jamarcus Ingram is stepping in, which isn't the worst thing in the world. And Kyer's made some good plays, but he's still grabby. He's still inconsistent with his footwork. And then behind Taron, we'll see who the backup apex or nickel is. My hope, if anything happened to Taron, is they take rookie Cole Bishop, who I like more around the line of scrimmage than I do as a deep safety, and kind of put him in as a big nickel apex defender. So there's questions there at corner behind the starters, but I feel like that exists for a lot of teams, not just the Bills.
Yeah, and so generally when I'm doing these, I start these right after the draft, and I do every team like over the course of a month. And basically where I end up by the end of it is like, man, there's no team in the league who has corner depth.
Yeah.
Right. So my notes end up being like, they have 3 starters. They're fine.
Yeah,
because it's like so many teams don't have 3 starters. But with you saying about Taron Johnson, that you probably don't want to move him outside, that's where that flexibility, I think, comes into play with a lot of other teams, where it's like you have an outside guy go down, you still feel like you're fine because you can find that nickel guy to off the street, even if you need to give you a few games. Now, looking at the safety position, a lot of change for you guys, right? Two big names in your history out the door. Maybe one still coming back. Is that still up in the air?
There's still kind of like, maybe Micah Hyde comes back. Like, he's been kind of coy about it when asked. Like, I don't think he does. Like, I don't think he's playing at all. I think he's done in general, but I would say there's a non-zero chance he comes back. But you're probably looking at some combination of Mike Edwards, Taylor Rapp, and Cole Bishop as your starting safety tandem in Buffalo.
And last year they had the 3 safeties there with Taylor Rapp coming into the room. How did they kind of work that? Was there some more dime packages in there for them, or was it really just more like what if someone went down and Taylor Rapp went in?
It was basically that. And okay. Matt Milano went down against Jacksonville. Same game Daquan went down. And what they ended up doing is on known passing downs or known passing situations, Taylor Rapp would come in and play one of the deep safeties with Micah Hyde. And then Jordan Poyer would be that dime linebacker on the second level. If Milano doesn't go down, I really think you're just seeing Hyde and Poyer for the majority of the year. And maybe you get some dime looks or they get creative and Rapp sees some snaps. But if you have a snap percentage up there, like I don't think he comes close to 36% if Matt Milano was healthy last year, which is interesting that they brought him back. And again, it looks like you're going to pair him with Mike Edwards. Like I don't dislike the safety room. I also don't love it. It's just they've had such high safety play for years, and Hyde and Poyer were really at the forefront of that. There is no free or strong safety. We just have two safeties. Granted, Poyer was more strong and Hyde was more free, but they were so interchangeable in terms of how you could use them. You don't necessarily have that now with Edwards and Rapp. Like they're each more suited for two high stuff. You can really use them as a post safety if you're in a pinch and you just want to break tendency, but you don't really have that range and athleticism back there that you necessarily would like. Maybe Cole Bishop adds that, but this is not to knock him overall, but I like him less the farther he gets away from the line of scrimmage. And watching his Utah tape, I loved him in and around the box, sideline to sideline. I liked him best as like a big nickel apex dude where you're blitzing him from the slot. He's fitting the run. He's covering in the flats or hook curls. So I'm interested to see, does he push one of them for a starting job? What's his role? But to your point, it's huge questions in general because either way, you have two new starters versus last year.
Yeah, watching safe is always so interesting because you just start to realize some guys are just not that great at moving backwards and just sitting in space and understanding kind of where they need to shift to. And some guys are just really, really good at moving forwards. And sometimes as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I felt the same way about Bishop coming in, but I'm interested to see how the safety room plays out. Now, I think we can get over to the offense here. And I mean, why don't we just start with the big spot, right? It's Josh Allen. Is it
Josh Allen?
I think Josh Allen's the big spot.
I think this receiver room is a bigger spot. I mean, Josh Allen is the big spot, but
let's start with the receiver room then, because I think that plays into Josh Allen well.
I mean, I think Josh Allen is Josh Allen. But you look at this receiver room, and I think the Bills were smart on moving Diggs when they did, because I mean he's an aging receiver, and I wouldn't tell me if I'm wrong, Anthony. Would you say this next season is a win now season for the Bills? I mean, I feel like it's more of a building block with the potential to break out.
I would agree with that. I think this season is more of a revamp than it is a rebuild. And
with the ability to still succeed, I mean, they're not. I wouldn't say they're punting by any means.
No, definitely not. I think they're still. I mean, I'm a wrestling guy, so Ric Flair, to be the man, you got to beat the man. I still think they're the favorite in the AFC East. Where they fit in the AFC as a whole, I think is a much more interesting conversation with how Houston is ascending, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and then Kansas City and even some of the other teams. But I do think they have the possibility to succeed more this year than they're getting credit for, and then really push themselves going forward in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really like this Bills team, and a lot of people that I've seen think that the Diggs move was kind of like trying to build for 3 to 4 years in the future, when I think it's more immediate than that. I think you don't want to pay that much to an aging receiver. His production last year wasn't where you want a paid guy to be, whether or not you agree with why the numbers were what they were, anything like that. But I mean, I think it was smart moving on from him. Go get what you can for him. I think he'll be great in Houston as well. I love Diggs. My dog's name is Diggs for his brother. But yeah, I mean, I look at Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins, Chase Claypool, Andy Isabella. Did they draft anybody?
Keon Coleman.
Keon Coleman. I like Keon Coleman a lot.
I
But
think
yeah,
he retroactively moved like 20 spots up everyone's draft board once the Bills PR team got a hold of him.
Right? He's just been crushing it. He's so charismatic. Like
he's huge.
he is a monster of a dude. And
He's
monster personality, monster size.
reminds me of Megatron. Like what they used to say about Megatron is like if he's standing in front of a garage door, he has like a 0%. What are they? Expected completion percentage? Like he can cover an entire garage door with his
wingspan, ridiculous in size.
Yeah, basically, yeah, like expected completion percentage.
Dude, with Keon, I cannot get his game against Clemson out of my head. Against Andrew Wiggins, like a first round corner, and he just end of the game
Andrew Wiggins
dunks on him in the end zone. Was it Nate Wiggins? Sorry, Nate Wiggins.
Yeah.
I'm getting my sports.
Andrew Wiggins went to Kansas.
Yeah,
and then
against a first round corner, Nate Wiggins, and just ends the game dunking on him for just 7 points.
Like, in overtime.
I could not look past that. I couldn't push him down my board because of that game. It was like, you can do this.
Yeah. And his Michigan State tape is literally that as well. Like against Michigan and against like top tier teams, like he's just dunking.
I was trying to watch Jaden Reed last year. And I couldn't take my eyes off Keon Coleman. I like Jaden Reed, but like Keon Coleman was just a whole different level.
It's nuts. My favorite comp for him, Nate Tice, I think, said it on draft night. Like he plays football like Sean Kemp played power forward for like the Sonics, and I was like, that's friggin' spot on. And that can be fun for this receiver grouping because they haven't had a dude like that. Like I've always wanted them to have a ball winner, a big-bodied frame, contested catch type of dude, like a T. Higgins. Granted, T. Higgins is much more than that. He's more complete. But I've always wanted that dynamic present.
Everybody wants a T. Higgins.
Right? Everybody would love that. But I've always wanted that kind of dynamic present for the Bills because they haven't had it. But I've wanted it in conjunction with Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley and these declarative separators that they've had. And that is traditionally what killed it with the Bills.
My heart.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. You're a Dallas guy. I forgot.
No. I mean, I loved him on the Bills too. I'm just sad he's not in the game anymore.
Yeah, dude. When he was going, man, he was just cooking everybody. And what he and Diggs both had in common, and what worked so well with Allen was they were guys that could separate anywhere in the route. They could win off the line. They could win in the stem. They could win on the break. And they were declarative separators. They were guys that would separate and basically just stand like air traffic controllers, like waving their hands like, hey, I'm wide open, throw me the ball. And it's not that Allen can't win if he doesn't have dudes like that. We just haven't seen him succeed with pass catchers of any different kind of style.
So I have a hypothetical for you, okay?
I like it.
So Bills start out hot, like say 6-1.
Ooh.
Something happens with the 49ers. I don't know what it is. I don't want to wish injuries on anybody. But 49ers are 3-5, 3-4. What do you get for Brandon Ayuk?
Oh, I have to crunch the numbers again and see if they can even afford it. Like they're how they have to work.
So it would essentially like be a 1-year rental with the hopes that you can keep him long term. But if the 49ers season is all but done for one reason or the other, and Bills are rolling, what would be too much to give up for him?
Honestly, and I'm looking at the 2025 picks right now because they made so many moves. So they have their first round pick. They have 2 2s, a 3. They have 2 4s, and they have 2 6s. Depending on when you're making it happen in the move, and if it's a pure rental or not, I have no problem. Like I'll give a 4th right now if it's like straight on the rental. If you think that like but if a long-term deal can be done, I have no problem giving up like a 2nd and a 4th and then trying to make that happen.
So I always think back to the Cowboys, Amari Cooper, whenever they traded for him, they were 5-3. Raiders were done. They expected a long-term deal, which they ended up getting done, but it was first-round pick. That was back in 2017. And Amari Cooper did ascend that team much further than probably anybody thought.
Yeah.
Because I hated the trade at the time, and then the production we ended up getting out of Amari Cooper, I'm like, I'll sacrifice that first round pick. And ended up being the safety out of Alabama that got flagged every time he made a tackle. But yeah, I mean, as a fan, not as the analytics side of it or like the number side of it, like as a fan making a run, like what are your thoughts if they go give a first for a T Higgins or a Brandon Ayuk if you're in contention halfway through the season?
Well, as a pure fan, like I'll look past whatever they gave up and be like, oh, sweet, the Bills got T Higgins or the Bills got Ayuk or the Bills got whatever.
This
Like,
is fun.
yeah, I'll just be like, oh, sweet, there's the player. Like, I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that too in that hypothetical, like it depends how they're rolling. Because I think even within that receiver conversation, even though Dalton Kincaid's a tight end, you have to just factor him into the pass catching conversation. And I don't think there's that A1 top tier mouth that they have to feed now that Diggs is gone, but you've got Kincaid and you gave some money to Curtis Samuel and you still have Khalil Shakir and you drafted.
I think
Keon
Curtis
Coleman.
Samuel's very underrated, but I feel like he also needs somebody to take a little bit of pressure off him to really perform at his best.
Yeah, I don't think he's a number one. I don't even necessarily think he's a 2. I think he's more of a scheme, like chess piece type of guy.
Right.
Like you're putting him in the backfield, you're putting him in the slot.
I think he's the best. I think he might be one of, if not like the best third option you can get in the league. But you have to have 2 true options in front of him to really get that out of him. And that's no disrespect to him, but I think he's like the perfect, like you have either a star tight end or you have a true one.
Yeah, you mean like if you had like, I don't
2.
know, like Stephon Diggs and Dalton Kincaid and then Curtis Samuel, which is why I was like, this is sweet. And then Diggs goes and I'm like, crap.
Right. So
is Dalton Kincaid that guy though?
How exactly is this going to work with like Dalton Kincaid? I think of as a big slot kind of player, right? Not necessarily your inline tight end, but Khalil Shakir, I think of as more a slot receiver. Curtis Samuel, a bit more gadgety, spent a lot of time in the slot. Keon Coleman, people talked about him as a big slot a lot going into the draft. I can see the vision. I also think he might be able to do some stuff outside at X, but how are you going to get all these? I even think Mac Hollins was a bit of a slot guy. You can probably correct me if I'm wrong on that, but how is this all going to come together in an offense that, there's only one slot receiver?
Well, you're forgetting Chase Claypool. He was very recently traded for a second-round pick. Very, very good player.
Oh boy, I don't want to do the Chase Claypool thing. And
me neither. We don't have to.
Yeah, no, good. I mean, he could make the team as a 6 wide receiver. Like it's 100% possible. I don't know how much burn that 6 wide receiver is going to get, but I think when you look
at the press clippings, he could make the team.
Oh God, I don't want to do that. Like I think if you look at the wide receiver room and the tight end room, both of them in conjunction with one another, you're looking at size and frame and athleticism and physicality and the ability to function both as pass catchers and as run blockers. And I think that speaks to the Bills moving in more of a condensed formation direction. When you look at the teams, a lot of like the successful offenses last year, and it's been a trend that we've been seeing in the league year after year with formational width getting lower and lower. But you look at the 5 teams with the lowest formational width in 2023, the Niners were the lowest, Rams were second lowest, Miami was third lowest, the Texans were 4th lowest, and the Lions were the 5th lowest. All teams with good schematic play callers, designers, sequencers, positive offenses in some form or fashion.
Only one or two Shanahan influences.
Yeah, right. Like his tree isn't really anything in the NFL anyway. I think you look towards. I think you look at. I think you look at more of like the Lions and Rams offenses last year, and I expect the Bills to kind of borrow from some of those. The Rams had a 95% 11 personnel usage rate last year. And it's like, oh, yeah, of course, because they've got Puka and they've got Kupp. And it's like, oh, they want to pass the ball. They run the ball a ton out of those formations.
Very successfully, too.
Yes, they do. And they do it out of those condensed looks. And it's because Puka and Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson before he got traded, and even Tutu Atwell, who's small and a burner, these dudes all block their ass off. And it's not just against like nickel corners and outside dudes. Like Puka and Kupp can fit up on a safety or wash down an edge. And even
Puka's a dog.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even in Detroit, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a better blocker than he gets credit for. And you know who was the receiver that had the second most snaps?
I love I love ASB.
I love
I
Amon-Ra.
love ASB.
Like my fantasy team
I'm
last
so
year,
happy for him to get his money, but I love
he
that
balled
guy.
out. My fantasy team last year had Amon-Ra and CeeDee Lamb. So I was just in wide receiver heaven last year with what they were doing. But you look at the Lions, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is such a great pass catcher and route runner. He's a better blocker than he gets credit for. But the receiver with their second most snaps last year was Josh Reynolds. The receiver with the third most, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Bigger bodied pass catchers who are functioning in condensed formations. Go to the NFC Championship game and watch them run crack toss and watch Josh Reynolds just erase Bosa snap after snap.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra's fitting up on Lenore, and Gibbs is out the front door. Montgomery's out the front door every
Also,
single time.
I just gotta give a shout out to my dude. You just named those 3 wide receivers, and Jared Goff still went off for all the Jared Goff haters.
That's right. I mean, Goff plays within a good like timing-based schematic system. Ben Johnson took advantage of it.
Quentin hates Jared Goff.
I say exactly what Anthony just said.
That's right. I don't love Goff, but if you can allow him to play on time, then he can be successful. He's good. He's a good anticipatory thrower, and he succeeded in Detroit. And I think
He's a dog.
He is a dog. And I think with what the Bills have done, I think you look towards more condensed formations and using your 11 and 12 personnel groupings with those bigger bodied athletic pass catchers who can also be run blockers, whether it's Curtis Samuel, who is a better blocker than he gets credit for, or Keon Coleman, or Mac Hollins, or MVS, or Dalton Kincaid, or Dawson Knox. Shakir's a better blocker than he gets credit for. But you can be an 11 and or 12 personnel you can be an 11 or 12 personnel if you're the Bills, and you can be condensed and run it right down a team's throat, or you can go in true spread 2x2 shotgun, or even put James Cook out and go empty. I think they have the opportunity to win schematically out of 11 and 12, because if they're in 11 or 12, they can get to so much of the menu without having to turn the page. You can do so much from your 12 personnel grouping if you're the Bills, or so much from your 11 personnel grouping. Again, in terms of the run, in terms of the pass, and using those condensed formations, you've got that size advantage if a defense is going to be a nickel. And if they choose to match with heavier personnel, cool. Now we'll shift and let's go spread, because is the bigger body you brought in, can they function against Keon Coleman or against Dalton Kincaid or against Curtis Samuel or against whatever pass catcher we decide to match up with? And then again, if you're going smaller, can you fit up against the run? Having more bodies near the line of scrimmage, you can get to more in the run game. You can get to more gap stuff. You can still do zone. There's so much creative potential. A lot of it just falls on Joe Brady's plate. Can he push the right buttons, pull the right levers, and maximize what this offense has? Because there's no walking bucket like Stephon Diggs was. Like I agree he wasn't what he once was, but down the stretch, he was much better than Bills fans and want to give credit for, and much better than the stats suggest. He's still there cooking L'Jarius Sneed. He's cooking Jalen Ramsey. He's just not getting the ball. It's still going to be a miss. It's a miss they can mitigate if they scheme it up properly, but you have to do it with scheme, because you don't have somebody previously like Diggs or even Beasley where like, oh, it's a big money down. That dude's getting open. Let me throw him the ball. It's a different situation. Kincaid is the closest to that, but he's still not at that level yet.
I like that. I like that a lot. And it sounds to me like it's time to buy James Cook in fantasy, if I'm hearing you right.
James Cook, the run game is going to be super, super important for the Bills. They were one of the best running teams last year, not even including Josh Allen. Forget scrambles, forget QB design runs. They were a good running football team. And you add in Joe Brady's ability to scheme up passes for his running backs, something he did with Clyde Edwards-Helaire at LSU, something he did for Christian McCaffrey and Mike Davis at Carolina, and then what he did with the Bills with James Cook and Latavius Murray and Ty Johnson. I would 100% buy James Cook's stock. He's going to touch the ball.
I also like the kid they took out of Kentucky.
Ray Davis, dude, like it gets downhill. He's a bit of a hammer, but he also can make you miss in a phone booth, and he's a much better receiver out of the backfield than he gets credit for. He understands timing, when to release. He has a good feel for space. I mean, there's Kentucky tape where he's out there running rail routes in the low red zone and catching touchdowns in the corner. There's a lot of versatility to that running back room as well. And I think you could have a fun 1A, 1B type of a group there with Cook and Davis. But Cook is this offense is going to go through Kincaid.
Don't tell A&M fans that Kentucky was a good ran offense, because Apparently their coach is just trash.
They had a good squad there with what they were able to do, especially not being out.
They rioted after trying to hire their coach.
Not great.
Now, if we're calling Jared Goff a dog
in college,
then Ray Davis is like a goddamn werewolf.
Yeah, bro,
that's a werewolf.
Yeah, like I mean, he's not. He's not equal to Goff.
It's not even a full moon.
All right, so let's talk a little O-line before we close this thing up. And this is my favorite section of the show every time because I just, for some reason, love to watch offensive line. But what?
Because you have a beard.
I guess so. That's probably it. That's
prerequisite. Yeah.
So
bearded and bald.
When I watch this, I think Deion Dawkins he's a pretty surefire bet out there to be a solid to good offensive tackle. Spencer Brown, I feel like his numbers came across really clean here, and I think there's a lot of stuff to like, especially as a run blocker. But I do notice on tape some I don't know if they're mental lapses or what, some more ugly misses at times on occasion. Do you think that's a lot of stuff that's fixable and still developing for him, or do you think it's something that's going to kind of continue to carry through with him, especially in a contract year here?
A lot of when he fails, it's because of poor hand placement. He'll go for a punch, and instead of getting it, right in the center of the chest or chest anywhere, he'll miss and like skim someone's face mask, and then he's caught leaning, and guys buy him, and he's beat. A lot of it is because of poor, again, I would say just poor punches in general, whether it's timing or pop. And then sometimes he gets a little, too far over his feet and gets caught, leaning in general, even when it's, separated from the punch aspect. I think he's still, and it's talked about so much, but he's still a work in progress. This was a dude who, his high school football, he was playing 8-man football, like he wasn't playing true 11-on-11 ball. Then he goes to Northern Iowa, which isn't necessarily up to snuff from a competition standpoint. Then he opts out with the COVID year. Then he's banged up a bunch his first couple of years in Buffalo. Last year was his first full healthy year. And so I think he's still learning how to play right tackle against good competition. He's doing that on the fly in the NFL. That's very hard. I think the year that he had last year was such a positive because he was such a roller coaster the previous years. You literally had no idea what you were going to get on any snap. And he'd be out in space making a run block that you would go, oh my God, this dude is amazing. And then on the next snap, he's losing in a quarter of a second from a pass rush perspective. And you're like, dude, and he's just getting absolutely waxed. The numbers are good for him. I don't think his tape was as good as the numbers may indicate. They gave him a lot of chip help, either with tight ends or running backs. If they were sending help in general, it was usually towards his side. They had a lot of just alignments and calls up front where Torrance, that right guard, is giving him support inside so Brown could overplay, the arc. And if anybody spun back inside, cool. Torrance was there to kind of give him that support and always give a little help. I do think it's encouraging the year that he had last year and going into this year. I think he is fit to be a starter, which is a huge positive because, like you said, on the other end of the line, you've got Deion Dawkins. So I think they're cool at offensive line from a pass rush standpoint. And then also just from a run standpoint, Spencer Brown's athleticism is part of the reason they can be so versatile in the run game. You're not going to see them pulling their guards a ton. You're going to see them pulling their tackles. They're running tackle wrap. They're running tackle pull, that dart concept. And you're going to watch Dawkins pull to one side and Brown pull to the other. And Brown in space is absolutely tremendous. He's so athletic. He's so fluid. That's really what they're going to hang their hat on.
Shouldn't move like that.
No, he should not. He's one of those few dudes who has a 10 RAS score coming out from the combine, and then you watch him move and you're like, oh, okay, that's legitimate. He's just so athletic and so fluid. And so he's a huge plus in the run game. Part of the reason why their run game is so good is because of Brown and Dawkins, but you've got enough from a bookend perspective. The depth can get a little concerning. I think it'll be interesting to see what they get from Lyle Collins. How healthy is he? What can he be? How much does he offer? Where does he offer it? But I think much like corner, how many teams are really sitting there being like, yeah, we're super cool with our tackle 3 and our tackle 4.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
Lyle Collins he's had moments in a big game, but we have breaking news.
What's the breaking news?
Terrence Shannon has been drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Okay, I like that.
The boy.
But so you mentioned that they were sending Torrance maybe a little out to help Spencer Brown. Do you think Torrance is a guy who can really afford to kind of give that space and still recover much back to the inside, especially in pass pro?
Well, last year he had the benefit of doing it knowing that like Mitch Morse was his center to the left. And Morse is so athletic and he can do so much. Like it was more like it's a 4-man rush and Torrance is kind of attached to Morse here helping, but he's watching over there.
Okay.
And then if anybody comes back inside on Spencer Brown, he's leaving Morse by himself because Morse can do that. And then he's going to go help and give aid to Spencer Brown. He moved much better in space than I thought he would. He lost I don't know how much, but he trimmed down a lot versus what he was.
Yeah, he beefed up to go to Florida, right?
Yeah.
Like it was I remember watching his Louisiana Monroe tape and then his Florida tape. It was like, okay, this is a much bigger dude, and he's not as mobile of a dude as he was.
Absolutely. And so he's still not the most like fleet of foot type of dude, but he trimmed down going into camp last year. I was there on day one, and that was like one of my biggest takeaways was just how, because I saw him in person at the Senior Bowl that year. I was on the field. I was right behind him. And I remember tapping my buddy who I was with because you could see his gloves. His gloves were size 5XL. And I was like, look at his hands. He's friggin' huge. And I remember standing behind him, seeing how big he was. And that's in February. And seeing how much he trimmed down for July, I was so impressed. And so, again, he's still not the most fleet of foot. You don't want him out in space. But he moved better last year. His whole play is just those vice grip hands. If he gets those paws on you, it's going to be a problem. I think he's still adjusting to NFL speed and NFL quickness, and that's something he's going to continue to have to adjust with. But he's another reason why that Bills run game took off. And when you're talking about strength and power and displacement, you look at the right side of that Bills offensive line, like you just want to run duo to that side because Torrance and Spencer Brown are just going to cave that side in, whether washing everybody out or creating it vertically and just annihilate, dude. Same thing with their pull concepts with like pulling their tackles. You just get Osiris Torrance will just wash somebody down. Or if he gets to the second level, he's sealing a linebacker because no linebacker is going through Osiris Torrance. He was a really nice addition. I don't think the Bills thought he was going to be there in the second round. I know I didn't think he was going to be there in the second round. He looks to be a real nice piece. He started to struggle a little bit more as the year went on, but I think you're looking at a dude who's going to be a real solid starter for the Bills for the next several years at guard.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Senior Bowl just for a second, because I remember one of the days I was there that year, sitting right next to a bunch of you Cover One guys and chatting with you guys a little bit. I was wondering if I might have talked to you there that weekend.
You know what's funny is like, you look crazy familiar, and I was like, it's got to be something Senior Bowl related. I know it has to be, and it's possible. I'm horrible with names. I'm better with faces, and the Senior Bowl is like, that was my first year as well, and that year was like a whirling. I felt like I was shaking hands and kissing babies like every 5 seconds with people. Right. And so if someone came and told me right now, like, yeah, man, like we sat and had dinner together, I'd be like, oh, okay. And I'd be like, damn, did we? Like, I have no idea.
Yeah. But so back to the O-line on this. So I believe it's McGovern and Edwards are planned to finish out the last two spots there. How do you feel about where they're slotted in here and expectations for this year for those guys?
I like known quantities. That's just like how I am. And I really liked what the Bills' offensive line was last year, and I didn't want it to change at all. I recognized, Morse, tremendous in space, great mover, not the best anchor, can get driven back into the pocket by dudes with size or power, but I wouldn't have, if you gave me the option to not change anything from the O-line last year, I wouldn't have. So moving McGovern to center is a bit of a change. You lose some of the athleticism that Morse had and the movability, but you gain a better anchor and the ability to kind of maintain the structure of the depth of the pocket a little bit. Also, kind of another domino effect of that, Deion Dawkins had a tremendous year last year, which is a credit to Dawkins. I also think it's a credit to him playing next to Connor McGovern.
It's always the five guys, right?
Absolutely. And that grouping, I think, really had a good chemistry and a good understanding of their roles and how they function together. Like, this was legitimately, especially from a run and pass perspective, the best offensive line Josh Allen has had his time in Buffalo. And they were one of the best O-lines last year, considering what they could do in the run and the pass. Like, their ability to run zone and gap scheme concepts on the ground and function in pass pro, it was truly like awe-inspiring, considering how bad or inconsistent their offensive line play had been prior. So I'm a little concerned just because of the switch. Edwards gave them a lot of value as their 6 offensive linemen. They ran a bunch of 6 offensive lineman sets. I would have preferred him to stay in that role. But I will say what's nice is he's an Aaron Kromer disciple, Aaron Kromer being the Bills offensive line coach. Edwards goes back to Kromer's time with the Rams. If Kromer trusts him, I trust him. Kromer's one of the best offensive line coaches in football. This is a dude who's been with him for years and years. He understands the philosophy. He understands the technique. If Kromer wants him in there, I trust him to be in there. And so I'm overall fine with it. I would prefer things didn't change, but lo and behold, here we are. I do think that'll end up being the starting five. I think it'll be Dawkins to Edwards to McGovern to Torrance to Brown. I think there's a small chance that if McGovern doesn't look at center the way you want him to, or Edwards doesn't look at guard the way you want him to, or if Cedric Van Pran-Granger, their rookie from Georgia, just balls out and maybe looks so good at center that you just want to move McGovern back to left guard, or somehow like one of those moving pieces allows him to get in there at center. I think there's a chance that can happen. But I think, all things equal, you're looking at a line of Dawkins, Edwards, McGovern, Torrance, and Brown.
Man, I gotta say, Van Pran-Granger, I suppose I should say, it was always such a tough prospect for me because I love everything I read about him. I love everything about off the field, on the field, the leadership stuff, and the football IQ is, you hear about how great it is, but I'm not sure if it was Georgia's offense or what, but I always felt like there were big lapses in his play at times. And I always had a hard time knowing what I was going to get out of him there. Did you see any of that, or am I standing alone on that?
No, I think there was some inconsistency to his game. Like I look at his movement, and like I think everything was there was a whole bunch of like, oh, this is good, but it could be better, or like this is good, but it's like not great. Like, oh man, look at him climb to the second level, but he doesn't really stay attached and doesn't latch on, and dudes kind of slip off him. Like I will say the experience I think is tremendous. And like his anchor is cool at times, and then also sometimes not the best. But his ability to scan and recognize and pick up games and offer support and get everybody set, I think from a mental standpoint, he's there. I'm interested to see if he can add on a little more weight. Can he get up into the 305s, maybe even push 310 a little bit? But I didn't think he was going to be there in the fifth. I thought he would go somewhere in the fourth, maybe.
Right. He was great value where they got him.
Like, and I'll take that. Like a dude, I think he does have like starting center upside. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be in 2024, but like you said, he's got everything from the mental standpoint, the football IQ. If he can just, and again, I think this is where Kromer comes in. If you can just get that refinement to his game a little bit, he has enough athleticism. He's tremendously smart. He has a ton of experience. Just clean up some of that technique, clean up some of, the bend in his game in terms of doing that instead of leaning more, clean up some of that hand placement. He's already really good at leveraging. Like he understands space and leverage, and I don't have to maul this dude. I can just get here and turn and shuffle, and then I can seal just off of my positioning and my leverage. He's got a good sense of that. And he does have a little bit of a mean strength. Like when he has the opportunity to finish dudes, he will finish dudes, but he just has to clean up some stuff. And I think that's a cool thing that he gets to go to somebody like Aaron Kromer who can potentially clean him up.
Yeah, I almost always wonder with Georgia guys, especially the offensive Georgia guys, how much development is happening in-house there, because it almost feels like they're getting these big freak athlete, 5-star recruits and just like, hey, just go do your thing, And it's like, I almost wonder if some of that was going on with Van Pran, of like, an NFL coach getting his hands on him, he might go a long way.
I think that's that's a very fair statement. I even think back to like who was the last like Georgia offensive player, I guess maybe, especially from a skill set standpoint too, that was like, just hit the ground running in the NFL, or was this
George Pickens?
Yeah, but he was such a he was hurt
the physical traits that really he wins with still. Though.
Yeah, but he hit the ground running.
Traits are just that good, like especially on O-line. You'll go like Broderick Jones and Amarius Mims. Neither were drafted on their technician ability. It was just they're different.
And I think with Pickens too, he was like he didn't see a ton of time at Georgia because he was banged up. Like who knows? Maybe if he was regularly playing all the time, then we're sitting here being like, well, of course he hit the ground running. Like, I think I guess I should have rephrased it. Like which regular starter or dude who was seeing a ton of snaps was a regular contributor like right off the bat. Like, and that's why I'm interested to see like what does Lad McConkey potentially do? Like,
Right.
and we'll see what Bowers can be. But
well, who's name Cleveland Browns running back towards ACL? I mean, Nick Chubb, he came in pretty strong.
Oh, they've hit. Well, their running backs have hit. I mean, Gurley, Chubb,
running backs different position altogether.
I was gonna say, not to be like rude, like you can take like a 7th round running back from Toledo and like they might hit. Like it's just the running back spot is just, it's crazy how you can just grab a dude and be like, well, let's just plug him in here and then crush it.
2nd round pick out of Memphis, just go out there.
I almost wonder if there's like a
you become the man and then you go to Tennessee a year later whenever you underperform.
I almost wonder if there's an extreme disconnect in NFL scouting. I almost feel like there is with safety to some degree of like, just you don't exactly know what you're looking for anymore with some of these positions. So they just kind of fall down the board.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So
safety is tough too, because like college coverages can get really messy in terms of like responsibility or rules based, or just like some guys blowing coverage, and your college, the safety position is my favorite position, but it's so tough. Like I'll watch coverage stuff and I'm trying to evaluate safeties and I'm just like I'm able to dip into a lot of buckets, but like coverage stuff is my strength. And I'm sitting there watching.
If you can figure out the safety position, you'll have a job for life, brother.
That's fair. Like but you can watch college tape and I'm like, what coverage are they running? Like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't know what's going on here. Because and then like, oh,
you think they run coverage in college? You crazy.
But there's some structure going on there, but there's so much like again, some of it is so match based or rules based and different things here and there, but it's such a tough spot to scout. And then running back is interesting now too, especially with how offense is in college football and then how offense is in the NFL and the differing responsibilities and lanes and how you operate. Yeah, it feels like running back and safety kind of get lost in the wash. And that's why these dudes who get taken in rounds 2 through 4 make an impact. And that's everyone's like, oh, where'd this guy come from? And it's like, because there's that disconnect.
Right.
Yeah. So after talking about this whole roster and everything, I mean, I think I'm higher on the Bills now than I have been all off season. I think you've convinced me that all the pieces are there, missing some spots at the wide receiver position, obviously. But it all comes down essentially to the one guy, your guy, the man out of Wyoming, and his name is Josh Allen. So you talked about the offensive line. I mean, I'm now convinced that we got a top 2, 3, number 1 offensive line in the league right here. So what does our boy got to do here? I mean, I've been long advocate of Josh Allen. I mean, top quarterback in the league. If his name's not Patrick Mahomes, if his name's not Lamar Jackson, I mean, he's right up there with it. So what do we got to do with Josh Allen here to get ourselves in contention to be competing for an AFC Championship, Super Bowl? I think the AFC is the toughest any conference has been in probably 15 years. This year's AFC. So I mean, I think if you compete in the AFC, I think it's about 5 or 6 teams that have a true shot at coming out of there, which rarely do you see for a conference.
It's an absolute murderer's row in the conference as a whole. Like it's tough. And even the AFC East in general, like I know people kind of poke fun at the Dolphins and Jets.
If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, Tua is fantastic. That Miami team is nothing to laugh at whatsoever. And who knows? I mean, Patriots hired a defensive coach. They went out and got Drake May, who I loved in the draft. That I think that defense in Foxborough is going to be tough.
Yeah. I mean, off the bat, when I just like went through the schedules, I had 3 different teams with 10+ wins in the AFC East, and I don't know who to take them away from.
It's possible. Like, and even just, with the Patriots, like they look to be like 4th, but I think I don't even want to say easily, but I think they comfortably have a top 10 defense already. And that's a defense that could also potentially like get to top 5. They're one of the best tackling defenses in general. Like you don't get away from their.
Are they assuming everything stays put? And obviously I would say the Patriots, the 4th best team in this division. Are they the best 4th place team in a division in the last 25 years?
Wow, really good. No, I don't think so, because I think if you look at the AFC North, like whoever the fourth best team in the AFC North is better than whoever
This year.
Yeah.
So,
Like, who's the fourth best team in the AFC North? Probably the Steelers.
I like the Steelers. So, yeah, you're right.
But that's what I'm
You're
saying.
right. Yeah,
If you told me you had like an affinity for the Steelers, so you think, okay, so it's not the Ravens. The Ravens are arguably the best team. Cincinnati.
Bengals. We got the Bengals as the best team in that division.
Bengals have a cupcake schedule this
But
year.
then I'm fine with that too. Okay, so like you want it to be the Bengals.
Yeah, you take them two out of it. Browns don't love the quarterback.
No,
don't love the quarterback position there, but great defense,
great offensive line, good run game. Like
Amari Cooper,
you could do a lot worse. You could do a lot worse. Like, so I think whoever the fourth best team in the North is better than the Patriots.
The Patriots. Yeah, you're probably right. Hey, Cupcake.
I like that. And so, yeah, even the AFC East is tough. The AFC as a conference is tough.
We've been talking about it since we started breaking down these schedules. Like, if you make the playoffs in the AFC, I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. It's going to be a dogfight, and all roads lead to Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I think the Chiefs will win the division, but at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs is what it's going to come down to. But you look at the Texans, you look at the Bills, you look at the Dolphins, you look at Steelers, you look at the Browns, you look at
Ravens,
the Bengals, you look at the Ravens. I mean, there's nowhere to hide in this conference.
Yeah, no, like, and even like some of the teams that, I don't know, like, are the Raiders who they were under Antonio Pierce last year? Do they continue to be that team? Like, because if they do, they're a problem.
Right.
Like, what are the Chargers look
like? Back to back first round picks at tight end.
Right? Like,
really, they just go out there and ball.
Really interesting. Like, I love that combo. Like, cool. Like, so we're just going to roll out Mayer and Bowers, and we're just going to be physical and mash. And like their defense
is nasty.
And now finally, Max Crosby has a running mate like Christian Wilkins up front. So now Crosby isn't by himself.
They also have a second-year rookie out of Texas Tech that might make the next step.
Oh, I hope he does for his sake. He pissed me off with how inept he looked last year for like the Raiders, especially with much of the conversation.
We were big on him, so that was a miss on our part.
I think he pissed it. And he didn't do anything wrong, but the amount of people, and I get it because traits and projection and all that kind of stuff.
He's a freak.
He is, but like Will Anderson was such a solid dude, and I feel like people got too cute being like, "Nope, Tyree's ahead of him," and I was like, "No," but
yeah,
I
love Tyree Wilson. As a three technique.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
His reps at three technique were pretty nasty last year.
That's fair.
And he's got the body for it. We're both Texas Tech guys, so I mean we're both Patrick Mahomes over everybody.
That's fair.
Kinda.
I mean, if Tyree can be something like Divine Diablo was kind of giving you some cool reps last year and fun
weird,
stuff.
But he's fun, man.
Right? He like just what he's become after being a safety at Virginia Tech and now transitioning to like linebacker. Like, and then again, we'll see what Harbaugh's Chargers look like. I mean, even the Broncos were like middle of the season flirting with a playoff spot before they fell apart. Like you've got teams
we don't respect the Broncos on this podcast.
That's fair. But you've got teams that can pull like, I don't know, maybe year 2 Anthony Richardson is something, and L'Jarius Sneed is on that defense now. Like
Jaguars with a healthy Trevor Lawrence.
You got the Jags. Like I know the Titans are kind of a joke, but what if Levis can improve a little bit and they kind of re-up a little bit?
Titans got a solid roster.
The entire AFC is a bloodbath.
I swear to God, I do not.
There's nowhere to hide.
Put losses in the AFC right now. Like,
no, the entire conference. Exactly to your point. Like it is a bloodbath anywhere you go. Like each division, let alone in the grand scheme of the conference.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a less than a 3-game difference between the 2 seed and the 10 seed.
Oh, I like that. That'd be a cool prop bet. I could see that. Like I think this is one where we're going into like.
I think I think tiebreaker is going to come in big time.
Oh, big time, yeah. Conference record matter.
Like everything, like every game will matter. It's going to feel like a college football season for the AFC because every single win and loss means something, according to tiebreakers and everything else. To where it's going to feel like a college football season in that conference this year.
And it's going to be, and there's so many like the matchups like just from a Bills perspective, the Bills are playing the Chiefs. The Bills got to play the Ravens. The Bills got to play the Texans. Like then that AFC South has to play each other. That AFC North has to play each other. Like all the inter-division matchups, let alone inter-conference matchups. Yeah, like you're going to go into week 16 and 17 and 18 being like, well, there's like 11 teams that could potentially qualify for the top 8 spots.
Yeah, you're going to see in the hunt, and there's going to be a team last place in their division. Yeah, like there's going to be 3 teams out of it. It's going to be the Broncos. Who else is going to be out of it?
But that's it. Like who else?
Broncos, Titans are going to be the only 2 teams out of it.
And
week 15.
It's so tough, like to even just sit there and say that. And yeah, it's going to be a dogfight in this conference. And I'm interested to see where the Bills like stack up in it.
We can throw Patriots in there.
You can throw Patriots in there too. Yeah,
Broncos, Patriots, Titans are going to be the only two out of it. Week 15.
I'm fine throwing the Pats in there. They can burn for all of eternity. Yeah, it's.
I think any casual football fan can agree with that.
That's fair.
They've had their fun.
I'm interested to see what happens with this Bills team. Like I'm not as high on. Like, I don't think the Bills have a top 2 or 3 O-line. I think they could flirt with like a top 10.
No, you convinced me.
But I think
we're putting them top 3.
Yeah, but no way. I didn't even say that. There's no way I could have convinced you of this thing that I didn't say. Like
your wise words convinced me.
They are a solid starting offensive line. Like I think they'll be good. Like they're not inept and they're not going to be roller coastery, which is more than fine for Josh Allen, who has been one of the best quarterbacks at navigating the pocket and reducing pressure to sack percentage year after year. He had the lowest pressure to sack percentage last year out of qualifying quarterbacks. And I think like to what they need to do for him this year, what Joe Brady needs to do for him this year, really just comes down to things schematically. Like for the joke that I've always given for years was like, if you opened up the Bills playbook, it wasn't like plays and concepts. It was just different pictures of Josh Allen, like doing athletic things. And I think this year it needs to be more.
There's worse offenses in the league. Have you
Absolutely,
seen
there is. But when you get to the playoffs and your entire resume is on tape and you're going up against Steve Spagnuolo and Lou Anarumo and these coordinators who are tremendous and also know everything about you, you need to be as diverse as possible. And so it's good enough to get through, but when push comes to shove, you see some of that faltering a little bit. Not that Allen's been poor in the playoffs, but you see some of that. You see some of the limitations kind of rear their heads. I think what the Bills really need to do this year to help out Allen and just kind of mitigate the dramatics from all the changes is some of the things that I mentioned, like offensively, lean into those condensed formations, lean into what you've built at the wide receiver and tight end room. You have all these body types that are big or long or athletic and can block and can function as pass catchers. Lean into that. Make it so a defense doesn't know, okay, cool, they're in 11 personnel. Yeah, but the 3 receivers are MVS, Mac Hollins, and Keon Coleman. They might just run the ball down our throats. How should we like match this? Yeah, but they could also pass out of it. They might come out and spread, or they might, be in like a condensed look, or they might not do either of those things. And it might be an empty and they're going 3-by-2 and it's going to be, a wheel route to James Cook from the slot up the sideline. Do we have somebody who can cover there? Like what they've got on offense is a lot of mismatch creators from a skill set plus body frame and type standpoint. It's going to be on Brady to maximize those with alignments, personnel groupings, sequencing, and layering. The run game is going to be important. I think they need more under center play action. I think that's where their explosives are going to come from. I don't think this is going to be a team where Allen's chucking the ball 30 air yards downfield. I think it's more he's firing stuff in the intermediate and he throws it like 17 air yards and there's a broken tackle and that turns into a 25 or a 30-yard gain. Being able to expose the intermediate areas of the field with that under center play action, maneuvering Dalton Kincaid all around, using him in the slot, putting him in line, putting him hipped off of an inline Dawson Knox, using him as a quasi-X. I want to see them lean into more of how Ben Johnson used Sam Laporta last year in terms of pre-snap motion and shifts and using him in any which way possible, leaning into him as the number 1 pass catching option here. And then again, tapping into the size and athleticism as a whole. The run game needs to function heavily, marry the run and the pass. And then defensively, I think the defense may even have more questions just because of how many changes we got going on. And then a new defensive coordinator as well, Bobby Babich. Is he calling plays? Is Sean McDermott going to call plays? How does the defense play in conjunction with the offense? Because if it's a team where it's like, okay, the defense isn't what it used to be, we need the offense to put up 30 points a game. can this offense put up 30 points a game? Like, and if they aren't confident in the defense, do we see more running of the football? How do we see that complementary football be played out? And how does it all come back to kind of helping out Allen? But there's potential on both sides of the ball. I think there's a lot of questions as well, which really makes the Bills legitimately one of the most interesting teams in the league this year because of who they've been and then what they currently are and how many unknowns there are in terms of what they're going to be this year. And then how important this year is in determining what they are going forward.
Yeah. Bro, you convinced me that I'm high on the Bills now. I wasn't high on the Bills, but you got me convinced. But looking at some futures and prop bets for the Buffalo Bills in this AFC, we have total 12.5. We have over at plus 112, under minus 138. We have playoffs at minus 184 to make the playoffs, plus 148 to miss the playoffs. Won the division at plus 165. AFC champs at plus 750. Super Bowl at 1,500. If you're betting for value and you have to take one of these bets, which one are you looking at and what are you taking?
Damn. I hate this because I'm also superstitious.
I'm talking strictly value here. So, I mean, plus 1,500 is probably fourth best odds in the AFC. AFC champ, probably around the same, about fourth best odds. We're in the division at plus 165.
I'm personally,
to me, I think that's the best value
money,
pick.
That's what I was going to say. I'm banging to win the division. Like,
because I think you can win the division and not win 13 games. I think you can win this division at 11, maybe even 10.
No, I agree.
Wins.
That's what I'm slamming. It was between that.
You're kind of taking the under and the division there. Like you're kind of because
Fair.
I mean, I think 13 games wins you're the number one seed in the AFC, and I don't know if they can get to 13 games.
It's going to be. I don't know who. That's actually a good one too. Like I think the first team, like the race to 13, might be like that number one seed option in the AFC.
Yeah.
And yeah, just from a value, the easiest one for me, like I think the Bills are making the playoffs, so I was going to slam the playoffs one. But then, like looking at it, that's plus 165 for winning the division. I think that is also has like if I'm looking at the most likely things of happening, like forgetting the value.
Yeah.
I think playoffs is the first likely thing, and I think winning the division is second most likely. But then the plus 165.
As far as value goes, I think division is the best.
I agree. I'm slamming that all day, and I do think again, like that's. I think, again, to be the man, you got to beat the man. I think the Bills will win the AFC East again. I think they fall somewhere between 10 and 12 wins. I think that's where
you want to pull up where we're at, Q, on these?
Yeah, I've got them at
just real quick before we let them go.
I've got them at 10 and 7. You've got them at 9 and 8, but I have a feeling you might switch some of those, Jay.
Yeah. So, can we still be friends if I have you at 9 and 8?
Yeah, I don't care. I'm obviously like a Bills fan, but I'm a football fan first.
Yes.
And so if I prefer the Bills to win everything, if they don't, it doesn't kill me. If someone doesn't like the Bills, or I get people like do that all the time, be like, "Oh, bro, you like the Bills? I don't like Josh Allen," and I'm like, "All right, I don't care. Like, do you, bro? Like that doesn't bother me."
To be fair, I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan, but I cheer for Patrick Mahomes probably more so than I should because he went to Texas Tech. But the third team I cheer for after them is the Bills. So I mean, they're kind of on my list of teams that it's hard to root against the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly
it. Josh Allen is so much fun, and then they're running the 90s. It's like and Bills Mafia is so much fun. Like if I could go to one home game in the league in late November, early December, it's a home game for the Bills.
Especially if you can time it right where like there's some good snowfall, not where it's like a catastrophe.
Enough snow to have fun.
Yes. And you get those tailgates and everybody's showing up between 8 and 9 a.m. or even some earlier in the night before.
Smothering themselves in mustard and ketchup.
That grosses me out. I am not about that life. Like I respect so long.
I don't want to do it, but like witnessing it would be something else.
I don't want to see it. I don't want to think about it. I'll watch some people go through tables. I'll watch some people set tables on fire and go through it. I'm down for that. But yeah,
send toddlers through tables.
And hey, man, you got to baptize them by table. And I tell you too, one of the coolest like things is especially if you park in, because you can park in like the lot attached to the stadium and tailgate there, but because it's in a suburban area.
Yeah.
So all around it are just tons of neighborhoods and people
Satellite lots and
yes,
in front of houses.
yes, parking in driveways, parking in front of houses. And so basically like the entire city that surrounds it is one giant tailgate. And then when you make the walk from those tailgates to the stadium, it's just all these cool different like independent merch tents, and some people are selling like legit NFL gear. Some people are selling like homemade retro gear that they make themselves. Like it's just such a cool atmosphere. And when the Bills are winning and good, it's like there's nowhere else you want to be. Like sincerely,
surprisingly enough, the Cowboys Stadium's very similar to that. There's a lot of neighborhoods within like walking distance. So
oh really? I would have never thought of that.
We used to get an Airbnb every year about roughly no more than a mile, but we could be walking up to the stadium from our Airbnb, and every single block you hit, you could walk down the block, tailgate with everybody. Everybody would have the early games on. Cowboys seem to always play on prime time, so it's like we'd be leaving during the 3:00 games, and we could go watch the Eagles hopefully lose. Everybody has beer, everybody barbecuing, but yeah. And then once you actually get to the stadium, it's kind of surrounded by apartments, and everybody that lives in apartments around there are all in their parking lot grilling and everything. And then you get to the actual parking lot, so it's like you're basically pre-gaming all the you're pre-gaming through the tailgates until you actually hit the tailgate scene to pre-game there before you go in the stadium. So actually a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell everyone where they can find your work again, where they can find you on Twitter, YouTube, anything else you want to push out there?
Sure. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro2_ANT. I host a solo show every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern called Disguise Coverage, breaking down anything and everything Buffalo Bills, but also larger schematic stuff as well, advanced metrics, some game tape and film. I rotate in different guests nationally, locally, people that cover individual teams. I had Mina Kimes on the show recently, so kind of some bigger national people as well. And then I also co-host a show called The Film Room, live every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, and that's a Bills film show, strictly film, pretty much nothing else. We do a little intro for the first like 15, 20 minutes to talk terms and topic and large-scale stuff, and then it's pretty much just an hour and a half of pure X's and O's and telestrations and all that kind of stuff.
And I can vouch for it. I highly endorse it. I was watching a bunch of your YouTube videos over the last 2 weeks in prep for this episode, on top of the film that I was watching on my own. Very good insight, very good interviews. Highly recommend. But thank you so much for joining us, Anthony.
Yeah, man, I had a blast.
Me too. I appreciate you guys inviting me. I was down right away. I appreciate you guys being able to finagle and meet my schedule. And yeah, this was a blast. Anytime you ever want me back, you got me. I had a great time.
All right. Have a great night.
You too, guys.
All right. So now we will jump to that schedule quickly, and then we will get into the Miami Dolphins. All right. There we go. We got the Bills record up. That's the wrong tab. There we go. Now we got the right tab.
All right. So we can just kind of run through this real quick. Week 1, we both have Bills. Week 2, we both have Dolphins. Week 3, I have the Jaguars beating the Bills. Q has the Bills beating the Jaguars.
You know what? I'm changing one. I think. Actually, no. I might change it later. I want to see what I have the Dolphins record at first.
I might give this one to the Bills. I might. That Jaguars game, he's got me fired up for the Bills, man.
Me too, man.
I was a little bit lower, but like it was one of those things where it's like, man, if like to me, he convinced me that this defense is good enough to play good ball, and I mean Josh Allen's gonna do Josh Allen things, so I'm all in now. But week 4, I have the Bills. You have the Ravens. Week 5, I'm gonna give this to the Bills too. I'm gonna give them 11 wins. I needed to take a couple of wins away from the Texans. I think I have them like 14 wins. So I'll give them that game. We both have the Jets winning week 6. Week 7, we both have the Bills. Week 8, I have the Bills. You have the Seahawks. Week 9, we both got the Bills. Week 10, I have the Colts. You have the Bills. Week 11, we both have the Bills beating the Chiefs. Week 13, we both have the 49ers beating the Bills. Week 14, I have the Bills beating the Rams. You have the Rams beating the Bills. We both have Lions. Week 15, I have the Patriots winning week 16.
They have to win some games.
They have to win some games, and it's Patriots Bills. Whenever you turn on Patriots Bills, Patriots find a way to muck it up and win. So I'm taking the Patriots in that spot. You're taking the Bills. Then we both have the Bills last 2 games of the season versus the Jets and Patriots.
So final, you now have the Bills at 11-6, and I have them at 10-7.
I think 11-6. I feel a lot better about 11-6 than I did about 9-8.
Yeah, I think 11-6 is fair. Like, I want to give them 11-6. I'm not. This AFC is brutal. It's just hard. It's hard.
I think I had the Texans at 14-4, or 14-3. So,
yeah,
I might have to go back and redo that one.
But moving on, and we'll try to do like 20 minutes each on these teams, I guess, because we ran way over. Well worth running way over. That was an awesome discussion. But let's try to give 20 minutes to the Miami Dolphins.
All right, first and foremost, I mean, they went out and signed Jordan Brooks. I mean, how could you not sign a tackling machine like that? Just all-pro level guy, go out there and get you 110 tackles a year. I mean, this alone takes them to contention for the NFC or AFC East. Just absolute dog out there, best off-the-ball linebacker in the game. I mean, I don't know much more I can say for a guy like Jordan Brooks.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jordan Brooks is a guy who probably doesn't get his due as far as PFF numbers go and PFF grades go. He's a guy who doesn't grade out all that well. But they also added David Long Jr. back there at linebacker. A lot of change on this defense. It'll be interesting to see how it all goes. But they hired at defense coordinator, a disciple of Mike McDonald, the Baltimore Ravens D coordinator last year. They're cooking something up. Like scheme wise, like the Ravens are one of the most diverse schemes in the NFL, and you can tell by their linebacker changes. I mean, Jerome Baker wasn't bad last year, but they let him walk and said, no, we want Jordan Brooks. We're getting David Long Jr. over here. They have an idea of what they want to be as a defense, and it's quite a bit different than what they were last year. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. To me, I'm very interested in what this defense ends up looking like. So it's one of my bigger questions on this unit. Moving over to the defensive line, big change with Christian Wilkins gone. I mean, that's one of the premier 3 techs in the NFL. A guy who could absolutely wreck games, was very good against the run, outstanding as a pass rusher. Zach Sealer's still there. Zach Sealer's a heck of a football player, but he's not Christian Wilkins in my mind. That's a big loss for them that they kind of piecemeal replace, like, go add Benito Jones, Tyre Tart, Neville Gallimore. They got some pieces to make up ground on losing him, but it's hard to moneyball it when you're talking about a player of that ability. Where they need to generate that pass rush is the edge rusher room. I mean, first glance at this room, you see Bradley Chubb, you see Jalen Phillips, Shaq Barrett, Calais Campbell, Chop Robinson, even Muhammad Kamara did some interesting stuff in college that you can be excited about. But then you realize Phillips tore his Achilles week 12 last year. He's hopeful he can be ready for week 1. It seems up in the air from all the reports I've seen. Chubb tore his ACL in January.
Has Chubb really ever lived up to what they traded for when they traded for him?
I think what they traded, I don't think they gave that much for him.
But they paid him
up to his draft value. But
yeah,
I think for what they traded for him, it makes sense. He's a good.
Well, they also paid him on top of that, though. It was usually whenever I don't know. I feel like
Well, I mean, to me, they paid him the cost of a quality edge rusher. So that's fine. In my mind, that's what an edge rusher of his ability costs. So, it sucks that they cost that much, but that's just the facts at some point. But he tore his ACL in January. What is that? Maybe a 10-month recovery if you're lucky. Maybe he can be back by late October. I couldn't find an exact timeline on him yet.
I feel like ACL these days is like 10 months. You're pushing a long recovery these days.
Right, even like 8 months, you're still talking probably late September.
But that's beginning of the season.
Right. But so my point, it's something to consider when you're looking at this team's schedule, when you're thinking about over-unders, is their two best pass rushers will not be on the field until before the season is done, potentially.
Yeah.
And then,
but they got Jordan Brooks.
They do. And the Shaq Barrett and Calais Campbell additions, that can help hold you over. Those are two quality vets. Yeah. But I'll have questions about this defensive line with the loss of Christian Wilkins and those two guys who are injured in Phillips and Chubb until they're on the field producing. Because it's not only getting back on the field, it's getting back on the field in playing shape and producing like you were.
Yeah, but the crazy thing about this Miami team is they had all these guys last year, and it seemed like they were always in shootouts.
I don't know. This defense, it was a new D coordinator. Vic Fangio's scheme is it has a lot of checks, a lot of calls in it. There's a lot of stuff that you need to be on top of that in the first half of the first year especially, is going to have cracks. And Vic Fangio's not there anymore because him and the players didn't seem to see eye to eye. But that defense by the end of the year was playing some very clean football and doing some really nice stuff despite missing those top two edge rushers. They held the Chiefs 20 points in the playoffs. They were
the Chiefs offense
playing well.
Chiefs offense last year wasn't necessarily elite. It was more of Patrick Mahomes going to win a game when Patrick Mahomes has to go win a game type deal. It's not like they were blowing people out.
Yeah, but still, this Miami defense was doing about as well as a defense could, missing their top two edge rushers, I thought. And a lot of that was probably coming down to the familiarity within the scheme. And you might see some of that again this year, though, early in the season with them struggling more. Because, again, new defense. A lot of change on this defense.
Neville Gallimore's a dog, though.
To be built. Yeah, I think he's fine. I don't know. I haven't watched him as closely as you have, so I'll have to take your word for it.
I didn't watch him closely, but he's one of those guys that splashes whenever he's good for one or two plays a game where you're holy shit, let's go, Gallimore.
So what's a dog then? Because to me, a dog is a guy who is
he was a rotation guy he was a rotation guy on the Cowboys. Whenever he came into the game, you were expecting him to make a play, but he was not an every down starter. So it's whenever he came into the game, you were almost holding your breath. You're okay, let's go.
Because to me, a dog is a grinder, a guy who can play every snap and just keeps doing his job, but then comes up in big moments.
So maybe not a dog, but just a vibes guy. Can he be a vibes guy?
A kitty cat?
Vibes.
Dolphin.
Dolphin.
Vibes dolphin.
Vibes
right. Guy. Looking at the secondary, not as much change here. Really some upgrades here. They go and add Kendall Fuller to a room that already had Jalen Ramsey.
Ramsey healthy?
I believe he's fully healthy coming into this year. He wasn't coming into last year, but coming into this year, I believe he is.
Yeah.
As long as he gets through training camp clean, which was the issue last year. He got hurt in training camp.
Yeah.
Kader Kohu, I have no idea if I pronounced that right, but awesome slot cornerback. This dude plays like his hair's on fire. It's a beautiful thing. I think that Nick Needham is some okay depth. And behind them, there's not a lot, but like we were talking about on the Bills one, there's only so many cornerbacks in the cornerback rooms in the league that have quality depth. If you have three good starters, you're in a good spot. And that's how I feel about this cornerback room. And in the safety room, you go add Jordan Poyer, in division rival, so you hurt the Bills a little, help yourself. Javon Holland, I think, has a chance to be one of the best safeties in the league. This dude is just a football player. He is really good at his job and what he does. And then it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with Cam Smith here. He was a decently high draft pick. I think it was 3rd round.
Great
if I remember
golfer.
correctly. Great golfer. Incredible that he can do both.
Yeah.
But it'll be he wasn't a safety coming out of college, so he's maybe transitioning to safety. If memory serves me right, he's pretty athletic and long, so he might be a guy who you see in more of a Kyle Hamilton type role in this defense, because remember, it's a Ravens-esque defense. So just all around interested to see how this defense comes together. I have some questions about it, but ultimately they have some high-end talent out here. And to me, the biggest question is the edge room getting healthy, and how are you replacing Christian Wilkins? Because otherwise, I see a really strong roster.
So who is their defense coordinator now?
Anthony Weaver.
Where did he come from?
Baltimore.
Okay.
He was under Mike McDonald last year.
Okay. I mean, I like this defense a lot, but I don't think the defense is what's gonna. If their defense is better than their offense, this is the cream of the crop for the AFC.
No, my question is more: will the defense hold the team back? That's where I'm concerned.
So we can just go ahead and look at this offense, and I mean, I think this offense lives or die by its skill positions. Just to name off, we have Jalen Waddle, we have Odell Beckham Jr., we have Tyreek Hill. Braxton Berrios as your 4th option's never a bad option. And then you look at the running backs.
Nice.
Do what?
I don't understand why Braxton Berrios has bounced around the league. The dude is nice.
Yeah, and he can return kicks, he can return punts. Then you look at the running back group of Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, which is one of the best young rookies last year. Jeff Wilson always somehow has a Jeff Wilson game where he goes like 12 carries for 189 yards and 2 touchdowns. Ahmed played well for him in spots last year as well.
Ahmed flashed here and there.
And then you look at their tight ends, and I mean, that's kind of where there is a drop off. But when you have Eric Azukama as your 5th wide receiver, it's like, do you really need a tight end?
No. I mean, their tight end is all like back to what Anthony was talking about in the Bills one. It's all about the blocking. It's all about the spacing and the crack blocks down on the defensive ends and the ways that they can kind of create the spaces that they want to use that speed. That's what the tight ends on this team are for. They are blocking machines that Mike McDaniel. I was just talking about Mike McDonald. Now I'm talking about Mike McDaniel. Yeah. Mike McDaniel has crafted in this offense to not really need it as receivers, because they're there for his run scheme, and that's what they do. You add Jonnu Smith, though, who does have receiving upside.
He does. Nice. And then, I mean, you look at this team. I mean, Tua is just gotta be Tua.
Tua's got to beat good defenses.
Yes.
That's what Tua's got to do. He's, like, statistically struggled against good defenses last year. Killed bottom half of the league defenses. But against better defenses, he needs to be more of a playmaker. He needs to be able to do it's in our QB tiering episode, we talked about this constantly. QBs who have superpowers versus QBs who don't have superpowers. He needs superpowers.
So how many quarterbacks could you put on this team? I mean, I know we talked about our QB tiering list, and we kind of went about it different ways because I took into account a lot of team around him, current situation. But how many quarterbacks could you throw into this roster right now where you'd feel confident that they were Super Bowl favorites? Not including Patrick Mahomes, because I think you could throw him on the majority of rosters. And like, are they better or worse with that if they had Josh Allen, or the same?
I think they're less consistent, but I'd like their odds as Super Bowl better.
Assuming the way Mike McDaniel likes to run the football, I might. Okay, so Lamar Jackson.
I mean, I think their odds are closer. Again, I don't know that they're favorite automatically with Lamar. With that speed, probably actually. With Lamar's speed and the rest of the speed on this roster, Dak, no, I don't think Dak moves the meter enough for them to be Super Bowl favorites.
Jordan Love.
No.
Joe Burrow. Different kind of quarterback.
Different, but yeah, Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow's on this roster, I think they're close to Super Bowl favorites. It's still, my questions are still with the defense, though.
Yeah. But assuming the defense can be better than league average, so in that 10 to 13.
Like ultimately, I think there's maybe only five quarterbacks that I'd say that they're like, so they're right there with anyone.
So Tua's getting paid. Okay, how about this one?
I think Lawrence. I don't think Lawrence instantly makes this team better.
Okay.
I think Lawrence might eventually.
Herbert.
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Because that was the pick, Herbert and Tua.
I think Herbert has this team closer. I think he might be the sixth quarterback that could do it.
I struggle with that. I mean, until I see Herbert do it, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's where we differ because.
See, I've seen Herbert perform against really strong defenses. That's my thing, because it can just do freaky things.
But I've also seen Herbert melt down in big situations.
You're right. He has. And that's why I said he's probably not one of the five who I'm including.
Yeah.
He's probably like the sixth.
Yeah. So they're paying Tua.
Oh, I think you pay Tua. Absolutely.
Yeah. I agree with you.
He can execute. You're keeping Mike McDaniel around. He can execute Mike McDaniel's scheme very well. I think you're always going to be able to find speed one way or another. And like ultimately, like, not that you can replicate Tyreek Hill, but you can replicate speed and you can create space through that. And Mike McDaniel has shown he is a genius when it comes to creating space. Like, he is the way he schemes this stuff up is really impressive. You don't really see teams operating with the type of space that Miami does.
Jared Goff.
No.
Really?
I don't think Jared Goff.
I think Jared Goff is
I think it's like equal, maybe.
But you look at that, I don't know. With the receivers and everything in place and the running game they can do.
I think Tua's subtle mobility is important within this offense, and it's something I don't think Goff has. This O-line is really not very good. And you need, like, Tua dropped weight to improve his scrambling this season. He had much to lose. And I think he needs it.
Yeah. No, yeah, but I just think of that golden arm. Just slinging it to Tyreek.
Yeah, the golden arm doesn't work all that well when you have pressure in your face, because he can't really change arm angles and get out of the way.
But at the same time, if Achane and Mostert are going for 300 combined, they gotta do something.
I think the lightning quick release, changing arm angles, and sub mobility is really important within this offense.
You think Tua would be better if he was right-handed?
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's a witch.
Yeah. He's a witch. Burn him.
Burn him at the stake. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they're gonna pay Tua. So this is probably the last year they have Tyreek and Waddle, right?
I don't know. What's Tyreek's contract even look like? I'm not even sure.
A lot.
No, I mean, is he up for an extension? Like, is this his last year under contract?
No, I don't think it's that, but Waddle's coming up.
I mean, I think you're gonna pay Waddle.
That's what I'm saying. They're keeping Waddle.
Yeah.
And Tyreek's getting older by the year. And it'll be his third year on his extension that he signed with the Chiefs.
So I don't think it'll be his last year. I think Tyreek Hill will play out another year or two at least to that contract.
Well, I'm saying they'll have to move him.
I think you'll push money in the future. You can make it work.
So you think we have at least 2 more years of Waddle and Tyreek?
Yeah, I'd say I think that there's 2 more seasons of it.
But yeah, I mean, that's tough. I mean, that's always tough when you have a quarterback that needs to be paid, a receiver that needs to be paid, and already the top paid receiver in the league, all on the same offense.
Yeah, I mean, I could be mistaken. I'm not super familiar with their salary cap situation, but I have to imagine they're finding a way to make it work.
Yeah, for as long as you can, for sure.
Yeah.
Would you say this might be the most exciting team in all of the AFC?
It's up there. It's absolutely up there. I mean, so the one factor that does concern me is on the offense is the O-line. And Mike McDaniel, he comes from Shanahan. Shanahan's offense have a tendency to
cover
the
up
offensive line being greater than the sum of its parts kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which McDaniel has shown an ability to do as well here. But last year, he had one of the best offensive guards in the NFL. This year, that guy's gone. This guy's in Carolina now. That guy's in Carolina now. And then Austin Jackson, I mean, he really started to look actually pretty decent for them last year, which is
Teron Armstead so good
when he's on the field?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, he only played 50% of the snaps. With Teron Armstead, he's always going to miss a few games no matter what. Last year, he missed more than just a few, but hopefully that's not a continuing trend. With him getting up there in age, I do think it is worth thinking about, at least. Maybe not worrying about yet, but thinking about. Because your depth behind him, you just drafted Patrick Paul. I think he's a really good athlete. I have questions about his technique, his ability as a run blocker. There's a lot of questions there. That's why he fell in the second round. But his size and his athleticism is all there. So if he's starting to put it together, then you start to feel a lot better about Teron Armstead potentially missing games. And as long as Austin Jackson keeps up the sudden trend upwards in his play after being widely considered a draft bust. And then adding Aaron Brewer at center, that's only going to make the run game better, if I'm being honest. Like Aaron Brewer, he fits this team, man. He's a 270-pound center playing in the NFL. That screams Miami Dolphins. Like that's this roster. 270 pounds, and I'm an offensive lineman in the NFL. But he's fat, dude. He is fast. He punches you in the mouth. He is a good run blocker. Great for his own scheme like this. But aside from center, though, these guard positions leave a lot to be desired.
Wasn't Isaiah Wynn a high pick a couple of years ago?
Yeah, Isaiah Wynn's dealt with some injury issues. They've kind of sapped some of his athleticism. He's not the same guy he was, and just nagging injuries have been the story of his career. He's good. He's been good when he's on the field, but it's just like he's got to be on the field and he's got to be playing healthy, So there's a lot of questions on this interior for me in the offensive guard spot specifically, which maybe they'll be fine just because Mike McDaniel has found a way for them to always be fine despite not necessarily having the talent. But I need to see it. I need to see it because aside from the smoke and mirrors of scheme, I'm not sure how this O-line works exactly if Teron Armstead goes down.
Yep. So looking at bets for this team, we have a win total of 9.5. We have playoffs about even, minus 132 to make it, plus 108 to miss. Win the division at plus 210. AFC champs plus 1,200. Super Bowl at plus 2,400. Bang for your buck. What are you taking?
I don't like anything.
See, if I'm looking
at
this
taking this is going to sound like it makes no sense. It's either miss the playoffs or win division.
I was at the under 9.5 or Super Bowl.
But why would you take the under 9.5 when there's a chance they can miss the playoffs at 10 wins?
Yes, that's true.
Like that's where I'm sitting. I like the no playoffs at plus 108 just because I think this team should make the playoffs.
Yeah,
10 win. I think a 10-win team might miss the playoffs this year in the AFC.
Yeah. But I also look at this team and we're assuming people stay healthy for the most part, if everything goes right, what team in the NFC can beat this team in a Super Bowl?
Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
Not in a Super Bowl, but
yeah. I mean, it always comes down to Pat Mahomes. But 24-1.
Basically, so where I'm sitting with it is like I just worry about them having to go into a cold weather stadium and win in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And maybe they can. I mean, hell, they took the Bills to the limit a few years ago. Like, I mean, I think they even won that game in Buffalo late in the season in the snow. So, like,
yeah.
They
lose to last year?
Can do it. They lost to KC at Arrowhead.
At Arrowhead, okay.
Yeah. And I don't think their division is going to allow them to get home field advantage. So it gets tough for me at that point to say AFC champs or Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think missing no playoffs at 108 is probably pretty. I think that's a good value because like you said, with what we've talked about with this AFC, 10 wins you could miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean it sucks. Like this, man. Where I'm like, I like this roster a lot. There's a lot of talent here. But I can't help.
They got to stay healthy.
Right. And you're already unhealthy with two guys who might start the season on IR. And
Jalen Ramsey hasn't been healthy in 3 years.
There's just a lot of ifs here of
Tyreek Hill has never really
change at the same time.
Tyreek Hill's never really been healthy. Or Tyreek Hill's never really been injured, I mean. Yeah. He's getting older.
Yeah, which I think could be a slippery slope once you start going that way. But like
especially with a speed guy like that. Like if Tyreek Hill tweaks his hamstring, not even to where he's still playing, but he's not Tyreek Hill, that's detrimental.
You know what worries me the most? Every game I turned on, Andrew Van Ginkel was everywhere. And Andrew Van Ginkel is not on this team anymore. And I think that is not talked about enough.
He destroyed the Cowboys.
I love Andrew Van Ginkel, dude.
Where did he end up?
I want to say Minnesota. I forget where exactly. But like that is a bigger loss. Like losing Wilkins, Robert Hunt, and him has to have an impact.
Well, he was like the third edge rusher. And they're like, I remember the Cowboys game. They're like, this guy wouldn't even be seeing the field if it wasn't for the injuries. And
every time he's been on the field in his career, he's just flying all over the place.
He was beating Tyron Smith like nobody has ever beat Tyron Smith.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, I think what they lost is hard to make up for. I mean, adding Chop Robinson is nice, like, but Chop's got some development to do. And, like, man, I don't know. I just have a gut feeling about this team that there's going to be some growing pains here with all the change that they have and maybe an injury or two that could hurt them. If that doesn't happen, if I am flat out wrong about that, I think this team has real Super Bowl hopes because they're that stacked.
Yeah.
But it's that if question to me with this roster that like every team has the if questions, but I just feel like it's a bit louder when I look at this roster than some other rosters.
No, I agree. Yeah, I'm very interested to see where this is a team that you can go into week 1 of the season being like, I'm betting on the Dolphins.
Yeah. So let's get their schedule pulled up here and let's see what we think. Going MIA, missing in action. Hopefully not for Miami.
So yeah, we are starting the season against Jacksonville, and they don't really have the home field advantage early on in the year that you talk about with the Dolphins playing at home. But we both still like them week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Week 2, Buffalo coming to Miami. We both like the Dolphins. Week 3 versus Seattle. We both like. I like the Dolphins. You like the Seahawks in that game.
I'm too high on the Seahawks this year, I think, but I'm letting it ride.
Week 4 against the Titans. We both have the Dolphins. Week 5 versus the Patriots. We both have the Dolphins. Week 7, we both have the Colts beating the Dolphins in Indianapolis.
This is a game that just feels like the Colts are just have to win. This is a game that every year the Colts win. A team comes in there.
I have the Dolphins at 5-0 going.
5-0.
I have the Dolphins 5-0 going to that game. Yeah. After that, I have the Cardinals beating the Dolphins. You have the Dolphins beating the Cardinals. After that, we both have the Bills beating the Dolphins. After that, we have the Dolphins beating the Rams. After that, we both have the Dolphins beating the Raiders. After that, we both have the Dolphins beating the Patriots. After that, we both have the Packers winning on Thanksgiving versus the Dolphins.
That's going to be interesting. That's going to be a wild game, I think.
Yeah. And then we have the Dolphins beating the Jets week 14. We both have Texans winning week 15. I have the Dolphins beating the 49ers. You have the 49ers beating the Dolphins week 16. I have the Browns.
See him dropping 2 in a row there with the back end at home.
Yeah. And then I'm losing 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 at the end.
This is a spot like that 49ers game is a spot that I went back and forth because I said I feel like
the Dolphins fade at the end.
But they do. And I
have them losing 3 out of the last 4. I have them losing Texans. I have them losing Browns. I have them losing Jets.
Yeah, I'm there.
You also have 3 out of 4 just in a different order. You think they beat the Browns?
I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, I think they beat the 49ers, and it's going to be like a big game where it's like, 2 games left. They can win the 1 seed, and then they go and lose to the Browns on Sunday Night Football, and then they lose to the Jets week 18.
Yeah, I'm sticking with the way I got it, just 'cause I think the Browns have a chance to be in turmoil there week 17.
Yeah, Dolphins could be too, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
I got 11-6. You have 10-7.
No, both got 10-7.
Did that change again?
Yeah, Bills.
Oh yeah, I got Bills winning the division now. I thought that I already updated.
So, yeah, I'm sticking with that bet of Dolphins to miss the playoffs because I think they're a 10-win team who might miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
All right.
So we'll go to Jets next.
The New York Football Jets.
Some of the best young talent in the league.
This is one of the weirdest teams to try to do.
So you look at this team. You have Sauce Gardner, one of the best defensive players in the league. You have Quentin Williams, one of the best defensive players in the league. You have Breece Hall, one of the best offensive players in the league. You have Garrett Wilson, one of the best offensive players in the league. All these guys.
Garrett Wilson is unfreaking real. The 3 games I flipped onto this team, it was like he was making wild circus catches in every one of them.
Garrett Wilson, I've been saying for years, Garrett Wilson is incredible.
He's wild, man. The stuff that he's doing out there is just insane.
Yeah. And then Breece Hall, when he's healthy, is unfathomable.
Yeah.
Quentin Williams is, I want to say quietly, but like everybody knows Quentin Williams is good, but I don't know if people realize how good Quentin Williams is.
I think he carries a lot of weight on that interior. Like his tape doesn't flash as much as you expect, but I think it's because there's a lot of checks he's asked to cover in the run game that take away from how explosive he can be in the pass game, and he is on passing downs, clear passing downs. Like you see him unleash it sometimes. It's just like, oh, okay, there it is. And it's like other times it feels like he's two gapping, or he's holding up a guy in front of him to keep a linebacker clean. He's being asked to do a lot of things that don't quite show up the same way on highlight reels.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, you look at those guys and you're like, some of the best at their position, and they're all like very none of them are on their second contract unless Quentin Williams has already gotten paid.
I think he has.
Okay. But I mean, Sauce is on his rookie contract, Garrett Wilson's on his rookie contract, Breece Hall is on his rookie contract. Mm-hmm. Like those 3 guys are incredible. And then that's not even bringing in Aaron Rodgers, which we don't know what Aaron Rodgers is at this point. But
Aaron Rodgers know what Aaron Rodgers is at this point?
No, but I'm not going to be the one to tell Aaron Rodgers he's not good.
Does it matter that Aaron Rodgers came in the building talking about everything needs to be about a championship, no matter what. Have fun at OTAs. I'll see you guys in a month. I'm going to Europe to do drugs.
I don't think so, because you know what Aaron Rodgers, when he plays, how good he can be.
Okay, and I'm honestly asking. I listened to a podcast by two former NFL linemen who asked this same question. One of them went, "Who cares?" And the other went, "No, that's bullshit." And so it's like I think there's a lot of different ways even NFL players can interpret that.
To me, if I'm on this team and that happens, there is not, like, say what you want about his time in Green Bay, but when he was on the field, he always gave Green Bay the best chance to win. And to me, if he comes into my organization, I'm ride or die for him. And the fact that we saw nothing out of him last year whatsoever scares me just a little bit because of the age.
Yeah.
Because we just don't know.
The opposite of, like, he's about to go torched earth, which there's a small part of my mind of, like, Aaron Rodgers when he's doubted.
Okay, well, let's look at this offense. With Aaron Rodgers doubted, they went out and drafted Braylon Allen, who, I mean, talk about a compliment for Breece Hall. Braylon Allen. Perfect compliment.
Thunder and lightning.
And then they go get a Mike Williams, which, if Mike Williams is healthy, in my opinion, is a top 10 wide receiver. Pairing him with Garrett Wilson, which we already talked about, is an absolute freak. They go out and sign Tyron Smith, who 4 years ago, Tyron Smith couldn't stay on the field. And then he's sneakily just been back to his old form this last season and a half, to where he's been incredible at that left tackle position. But he is getting old, and he did show about 2.5 years of not being able to stay on the field. But for his first 7 seasons, never missed a snap. And people were talking about him challenging the Browns. Who's the Browns left tackle?
Oh,
retired.
Willis, or retired. Oh, Joe Thomas.
Joe Thomas. People were talking about Tyron Smith challenging Joe Thomas's consecutive snap record 7 years ago. And then all of a sudden he went from never missing a game to missing like 12 games in a 2.5 year span. But then all of a sudden just went back to not missing games anymore, playing very, very well, but he is getting older.
Well, even if he goes down, I do not think we're talking about a power run offense with Aaron Rodgers at the helm.
Well, Tyron Smith has never his strength has always been pass blocking over run game.
I'm not even talking about Tyron Smith. I'm talking about Tyron Smith gets injured.
Oh,
you're not talking about a power run offense, and you drafted the best pass blocking tackle in the class.
Yes,
like Olu Fashanu, he was knocked down my board for his run blocking, but his pass blocking is about as good as it gets for a prospect. Like that's clean. You don't worry about that. So with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, I feel pretty good about them at offensive tackle with Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith and Olu Fashanu just sitting behind them in case they need them.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you look at this offense, and we'll probably have to get into the defense some more, but I look at this offense, and it's like, if they're healthy, can anybody stop this offense in a late game situation to where they have the ball, they're down 4, and they get the ball with more than a minute 20 left? Who's keeping this team out of the end zone if they're all healthy?
So I do have some questions with Mike Williams. And I mean, I know you say if they're healthy, Mike Williams hasn't really been healthy.
Ever.
You know, like, I mean, there's always questions about him. He's coming off a torn ACL right now at 30 years old. And that's a big cog in this. Like, no Mike Williams, you got Alan Lazard, you got Xavier Gibson, you got Malachi Corley, the screen master. Like, that, I mean, Corley has done
that is the story of Aaron Rodgers' career.
No, it is. You're right, but like that's the story of Aaron Rodgers' career has also been coming up short in the playoffs. So outside,
I'm not talking about playoffs.
Okay, but so basically, I look at this wide receiver room. I see a room that isn't up to snuff with a lot of the rest of the league, despite having some of those the two of those star names. I guess that's where I'm getting at with the offense, where Aaron Rodgers might be able to make up for that. He has in the past, but if we're talking about how is this team going to get stopped, to me, the wide receiver room is the big flag.
Yes, but historically speaking, has Aaron Rodgers ever had a better offensive group around him than this? Because like you had the years of like Jordy Nelson, the 1 year of Cheeseburger
Jordy
Eddie,
Nelson, Greg Jennings, and Devontae Adams. I believe he had all three starting at one point.
I don't think so.
It was really early in Devontae Adams' career. He was putting up like 400 yards.
I didn't think him and Jennings ever crossed. I mean, I could be wrong, but
I could be wrong too. I'm speaking purely off memory,
but
on that. But like,
this is also an argument I like to make. Like, would Jordy Nelson be Jordy Nelson if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers? Because I make like it's the same argument. It's like Miles Austin was an all-pro wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. Is Miles Austin an all-pro wide receiver if Tony Romo's on his quarterback?
I mean, maybe not.
Like,
tough to say. But so in 2014, they had Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and Devontae Adams. It wasn't Greg Jennings. It was, but Randall Cobb put up 1,300 yards that year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised Randall Cobb's not on this team.
He
was last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. But in the tight end room, I actually like what they got with Tyler. I think Tyler Conklin is a guy who doesn't get talked about enough. And
he was huge for Joe Burrow early in Burrow's career. Was it Tyler Conklin?
No, I think you're thinking of CJ Uzomah.
I am thinking of CJ Uzomah. Where's he at now? I thought he signed with the Jets.
He was with the Jets. I'm not sure he's in the league right now. He was always good when he was on the field, but he always had issues staying healthy. And then Rucker was a pretty high draft pick a year ago. Did some stuff in his rookie year, not a lot, but tight end's a tough position to transition through. Their interior O-line isn't exactly locked up. Like, I think Joe Tippmann's going to have a really nice second season after doing some stuff as a rookie. It's tough to come in as a rookie at center and really be good, but he showed a lot of good stuff as a run blocker and made growth as a pass blocker throughout the year when he was on the field. He missed a few games, but adding John Simpson at guard, he's questionable to me. Like, he's okay. But Elijah Vera Tucker next to him, as long as he's back healthy, coming off a torn Achilles, that's rough. So hopefully he's back to 100% for this team. If he is, I feel pretty good about this O-line. If he's not, the offensive guards get a little shaky for me. But you have the bookends and you have the center. I think you can figure it out, but it is a little bit questionable in my mind.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I mean, this team is it might be the most fascinating.
No, it's so interesting. Like this roster is just there's a lot of talent, but there's like some of these question marks too, where like some stuff hinges on a few guys making it work. And their defense was awesome last year. Their defense will probably stay awesome this year. Like looking at their defensive tackle room, Quentin Williams and Quentin Jefferson left, but you had Javon Kinlaw, who was a proven pass rusher. Solomon Thomas, truthfully, Solomon Thomas is a joke to a lot of people, but he flashes, man. He makes some flash plays that are fun. I'm not sure he's an every down player for you.
Quick trivia question. Where did Solomon Thomas get drafted?
Number 3 overall to the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I knew you knew it. I just want to let the people know. Yeah, nobody talks about that. The San Francisco 49ers with no quarterback passed on Patrick Mahomes to take Solomon Thomas. And all they talk about is how the 49ers fleeced the Bears. And they also passed on Patrick Mahomes. So take that, 49ers fans.
But anyways,
at least the Bears took somebody.
Yeah. I think that as long as as long as Quentin Williams is on the field, this defensive tackle room will be generally fine. He's just
Can you imagine
freaking monster?
Can you imagine if Mekhi Becton would have actually been good like he flashed early on in his career?
It would have been something.
Dude, that dude mauled people.
I know.
In his rookie year.
Flat out, just road graded people, man. Ran them over.
One of like the most dominant like offensive tackles I've ever seen in my life his rookie year.
No, he was incredible.
It just got fat.
So this edge rusher room, I don't know what's going on with Hassan Reddick. No one seems to know. Like maybe he's gonna play for them. Like it's weird. I'm sure he'll be out there come the start of the season, but I don't. It all feels really weird to me.
Do you need to give him a Nick Sirianni speech? Like you plant a flower and you watch it bloom, and then whenever the blooms turn purple, it's time to rush the passer.
Yeah, that's probably it. That'll work.
That's what he needs.
Yeah, but with him, I think this edge rusher room is pretty sick. Without him, I still like it. I think that Will McDonald didn't get near enough chances last year, and hopefully he gets more chances this year. Michael Clemens flashed here and there on tape. But Jermaine Johnson, Hassan Reddick, that's a good starting duo. They don't have like a specific guy who just kicks ass out there at the edge position. You know, they don't have a Nick Bosa. They don't have like a Myles Garrett. Like none of these guys are that level of player. When you got Quentin Williams on the inside, you have guys who are going to get after the passer. And that's going to work.
Javon Clinlaw, if he's playing at a top end level.
Yeah. Like you have talent here. And I just want to see more Will McDonald, if I'm being honest, because I loved him coming out of college.
West Virginia, baby.
At linebacker, you got CJ Mosley having a bit of a career revival here the last year or two.
Yeah. What year is he in now?
I don't know, man. He's 32 years old.
He had a career with the Ravens.
Yeah.
And then he got traded, tore his ACL. He got
signed as a free agent. Signed as a free agent with the Jets.
Oh, signed as a free agent.
And then MetLife
tore his ACL. And then he took off the COVID year, didn't he?
Yeah.
Like, didn't even play. And
then he came back with a vengeance, man. He's
then played well. Like, that was kind of shocking. But yeah, good for him. But yeah, he's good.
And then next to him, you got Quentin Williams' brother, Quincy Williams, who is quietly
basically twins.
Pretty darn good linebacker. Like he doesn't get the credit he deserves. He's a good
and they have a defensive head coach.
Yeah. These guys fly around forcing fumbles too. Like these guys rip at the football like crazy. It's wild how many fumbles they were forcing in the games I watched.
Yeah.
And then you look at the cornerback room. This might be the best cornerback room in the NFL. Again.
Yeah.
This defense can take a lot. You can take a lot of liberties on defense with how aggressive you want to be, how much risk you want to take when you have cornerbacks like this who can lock down man coverage the way they do. Like you can play 5-on-5, 4-on-4, however many it is, and send the rest of the guys at times because you've got Sauce, you've got DJ Reed, you've got Michael Carter II. These guys are football players. Yeah, you got the CFL legend Quantez Stiggers. Best name in football.
And top 5 for sure. And
Isaiah Oliver's good depth too, and he can serve in kind of a dime back role. He can do some really versatile stuff back there.
Sauce Gardner has somehow ended up in this social media age of like people acting like he's overrated because so many people love him. Sauce Gardner's a dog.
Don't get lost in the sauce.
Don't get lost in the sauce. People try talking like he's already overrated. He's a damn good corner.
Yeah, he's about as good as it gets.
Yeah, like they show like 3 plays a year where like he gets beat, and I'm like, you found 3 plays where a corner gets beat? Like, dude, grab any corner in the league. Corners get beat. Like,
so as anyone knows who watches these cut-ups that we do of each episode for each team, I go through games. I try to find, good moments for players and maybe some bad ones if I want to shine some light on like, okay, this guy might not be great, but there's good and bad in his tape. I went through 3 games trying to find a Sauce Gardner highlight, like a clear one, not to someone who's a tape junkie, but to someone who just wants to enjoy watching some football in the off season and see some plays that maybe learn a thing or two, or just want to get to know the game a little better. I couldn't find one because nobody throws at Sauce Gardner.
Yeah, nobody.
Like, I went through 3 games and couldn't find like one good moment of like a pass breakup or him breaking on a football because he only had like 3 targets.
Yeah.
And they were off target. Like they weren't even taking the risk. It was wild. I've never seen anything like that. That's how good Sauce Gardner is.
Yeah, he's like Darrelle Revis.
Yeah, you just don't throw at him.
Yeah.
At the safety spot, Tony Adams and Chuck Clark are the listed starters. Chuck Clark didn't play at all last year at 29 years old, but great name. I think these safeties they're fine. I didn't notice anything on tape that made me say, ooh, like that's not good.
Yeah.
Really, when your corners are this good, your safeties are probably playing a more specific role. And I think these guys are plenty good at doing that. Fill in the run lanes, being ball hawks in the secondary. Adams and Ashton Davis both had 3 interceptions last year. These guys are going to attack the football, attack the run lanes, and let the corners do their job. Like, I think that'll be fine.
So, looking at the team as a whole, is it Super Bowl or bust? Because you can't imagine Aaron Rodgers is going to be here for much longer.
How can it not be?
It's got to be.
It absolutely has to be. I'll take this a step further. If there's one team that should go out and get Brandon Ayuk, it's the Jets. T. Higgins. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think T. Higgins will be available, but like, if the Bengals get off to it, well, then again, will Brandon Ayuk even be available? Like,
yeah, I mean,
if either of those teams get off to a rough start for some injury reason or something, I think the Jets need to be calling about adding a real wide receiver threat to this team, because Corley, there's some nice stuff. I know he's like built a good connection with Aaron Rodgers so far in the offseason and all that, but like, I'm not sure Corley is a guy you want to rely on in a playoff game to make that catch, to get open, to separate. Like,
but the Aaron Rodgers factor,
maybe I'm wrong, but
the Aaron Rodgers factor is the crazy thing about that though, is because it's like this dude will make the 5th best receiver on this team his primary target. Like,
yeah, he'll do something. Well, he'll do that after they trade for Brandon Ayuk. He'll just be like, nah, I don't want that guy.
Yeah, that's probably what'll happen. They'll trade for Brandon Ayuk, and then like somebody who had 7 targets leading into the trade will end up leading the team in targets after they trade for Ayuk.
Let's see.
And he's like, thanks for the decoy. He'll say thanks for the decoy.
Xavier Gibson will lead this team in targets. Just watch.
After trading for a receiver.
Yeah. I mean, really though, like that's the spot where I look at this team and I'm like, you can figure out the guards. You have the bookends. You have the center.
They're gonna run.
You can make the guards work. And Vera Tucker, if he's back and healthy off that Achilles, is not even a worry. So like the O-line, I'm not really worried about. Quarterback, we'll see. He's still Aaron Rodgers. Running back room, you got good talent there at the 1 and 2 level. And the whole defense, I feel like you're in a pretty good spot with. You might want a little more beef at D tackle, but when you've got Quinn and Williams, you'll be fine. It's just the wide receiver rooms. It's just that's the one spot where I see a weakness on this roster.
This might be the only team that in the AFC specifically that I might take AFC champs over Super Bowl, for the sole fact that there's a pretty good chance they're going to be playing the 49ers, and Aaron Rodgers can't beat the 49ers. So I might
like
take
that logic.
I might take AFC champs at 10-1 value-wise over Super Bowl at 20-1 when you look at over-under 9.5, playoff minus 170, plus 138 to miss, winning the division at plus 185, AFC champs plus 1,000, Super Bowl champs plus 2,000. This might be the only team in the AFC where I like the AFC champs over the Super Bowl, because every other team in the AFC, I'm like, if I think they're going to win the AFC, I think they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm like, they're not beating the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, I you sold me. I'm on AFC champs plus 1,000. That is great logic. I'm here for it. And you know, I'm terribly sorry, Jets fans, but what would be more Jets?
Yeah, what would be more Jets, and what would be more Aaron Rodgers? Like all of that cultivating together, like that. That is how the story ends.
Oh man, I for the sake of Jets fans' mental health, I hope not. But like,
I hate the 49ers.
I can see it.
And I hate Aaron Rodgers. That might be the worst Super Bowl in my cognitive life, other than Steelers Packers, my senior year of high school at Jerry World, where I had to watch Aaron Rodgers win a Super Bowl my senior year of high school against a team that I also hate. And I wasn't really cheering for anybody. I was just hoping that, I don't know what I was hoping for, but nothing. It was just bad.
You know what? I forgot about the Aaron Rodgers 49ers aspect. I really did.
Yeah. So starting off the season, we both have 49ers beating the Jets in San Francisco. After that, we both have the Jets beating the Titans. And then the Jets beating the Patriots. Jets beating the Broncos. Jets beating the Vikings.
And then
Jets beating the Bills.
Game part 2.
Yes. Jets beating the Bills. I have the Jets beating the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Q has the Steelers winning that game. Then we both have the Patriots winning week 8. I have the Texans week 9.
Taking the Jets on Thursday night at home.
Give me the Jets here. I gotta bring the Texans down a little bit. We both have the Cardinals week 10. Then we both have the Jets beating the Colts. We both have the Jets beating the Seahawks. We both have the Dolphins beating the Jets. Then I have Jets. Q has the Jaguars week 15. Week 16, I have the Rams. Q has the Jets. We both have the Bills week 17. Then we both have the Jets week 18.
All right. So that brings you to 11-6. And
I think that brings me to
12-7.
Is that saved? I thought okay. 11-6, 10-7. Yeah.
Let's see. Yep, 11.
Okay. I thought I had them 11 already. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is assuming health, obviously.
Yeah.
So we can fly through this Patriots talk real quick and then just look at what we have the AFC in a whole now that we finished the AFC.
Well, let's give it a little bit just so I can get at least a 15-minute video out on it.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, this team begins and ends with the defense. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, this defense is impressive and fun.
Matthew Judon's a dog. How was Gonzalez last year? Number 1 corner picked?
He was really good when he was on the field.
Or not the number 1 corner pick, but number 1 corner in a lot of people's words.
Yeah, he was really good when he was on the field, but then he got hurt and missed the rest of the season.
And then we also have Christian Barmore, White Uche.
Yeah, Keon White and Josh Uche. They both have the same number here. So I just put them both because this defense is so multiple. They use so many guys in their D-line. I can't fit them all.
Then Peppers, who was one of the most dynamic players in the draft when he was drafted, went to Cleveland, played a little bit there, went to the Giants, played a little bit there. I've been wanting this dude on the Cowboys for 7 years now, and he just keeps moving teams and doesn't end up on the Cowboys. I love Pepper.
Hot take. He's become one of the best safeties in the NFL in New England.
I love him.
He's really him and Kyle Duggar are just like so much fun to watch.
I've been wanting him for so long, and he just keeps moving teams.
Last year, he had one of the plays of the year. Like, I'm gonna do a YouTube short about it that's tied to this video, but like One play from him this year was just like filthy fun.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you look at this defense and you're like, if they play at a high level, you have Jacoby Brissett listed as the starting quarterback. I think it'll be Drake May pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, my gut says Drake May should be the starter, but like with this O-line, I'm not sure that they're going to want to put him behind it.
True, but we also don't know anything about this Patriots coaching staff, or we do, but we don't.
So there's like, there are some questions there with like their OC. I believe it's Alex Van Pelt. He's been in Cleveland with under what's Cleveland's coach's name? Stefanski, under Kevin Stefanski, and before that he was a Green Bay guy with Aaron Rodgers, and the history of those guys has been kind of rough. You know, you wonder if he maybe expanded his horizons with Stefanski some, but it's still a question for me, the OC here. And really, defensively, something that I think is getting a little understated right now, like, and this might just all be speculation, but out the door is arguably the greatest defensive mind the NFL has ever seen. That has to matter somewhat. Like, I know Gerard Mayo has been with him for forever and has learned all his tricks and all of that, but he's still not Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick has to have value here for what this defense was last year. I think this defense is still going to be really good. They still have a lot of talent. Like, they are still probably one of the more talented defenses in the league. But Belichick, the fact that Belichick is not pushing the buttons anymore, I have to put some value on that. Because the defense is going to have to carry this team, in my opinion. I do think offensively, I mean, we look at some of the weapons here. I'm a big fan of Ramondre Stevenson. The Patriots are too, based on the new contract they gave him. I think his footwork is some of the best in the league for a running back. He sets himself up to get in and out of reads and weave in and out of running lanes through reads that he sees. Like, his footwork is just very nice. Antonio Gibson is a guy who probably hasn't gotten enough credit in the league for what he's done in Washington. I think behind a pretty rough O-line there last year, he did some nice stuff. I mean, 5.8 yards per touch. A lot of that as a receiver. He's a guy you can line up out wide, do some nice things with. I think that's a really good 1-2 punch in that room. And then at wide receiver, they're missing stuff. Like, it's pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
But I will say, do not sleep on Demario Douglas. This dude has juice. Like, he juked
people
Cowboy out of his shoes, man. It was awesome.
People forget that Jalen Reagor was taken before Justin Jefferson.
They do. Was that even the same draft?
Yeah, back-to-back picks.
Were they? Okay, I didn't remember. I thought Jalen Reagor was like a year or two before, but
no. You've never seen the draft video?
I probably have.
Minnesota's draft room basically went crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, they took the kid out of TCU. Send the pick. And then they take Justin Jefferson.
But in this receiver room, like, I can see ways that it could work. You know, I think Kendrick Bourne is a nice football player. I think Juju had a really down year last year, riddled by injuries. If Juju bounces back to something serviceable, plus Demario Douglas being a nice weapon for you, with that, his agility is wild, man. He's fun. And then Jalen Polk maybe having a nice rookie year. I like him enough. I think he's Rome Odunze light. Ultimately, like, that's where I ended up on him on a draft eval. He does a lot well, but it's all just a little bit less than a guy like Rome Odunze did to me. But
I can't believe Juju Smith-Schuster left Kansas City. If I'm Juju Smith-Schuster, the money difference I don't know. I'll never disparage man for going to get more money, but the money difference between playing for the Kansas City Chiefs and having Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback versus taking the contract for the Patriots, to me, never makes sense because, I mean, you're basically talking taxes at that point in difference. Like, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess so. I don't know what, like, maybe KC wasn't even interested in offering him real money, you know?
yeah, maybe so. I mean, I mean, with what maybe KC just said, we're not offering you that. I mean, that could be true. But to me, if I'm him, I mean, he is the perfect receiver for that Chiefs offense, to where I'm like, I would figure out a way to stay in KC.
Yeah, I mean, Rashee Rice took his spot. Rashee Rice did pretty well.
Yeah, and now Rashee Rice might not have a spot.
Yeah, and the tight end room, I think this could be pretty interesting.
Hunter Henry just got extended again. They paid him twice.
The dude just keeps doing it, man. He's just quality. He's like end of career Jason Witten right now.
Is he just perfectly average?
Yeah.
Is that like I've always liked Hunter Henry. You turn on the tape and you're like, oh, he's open. He never really flashes.
No,
but he's
just crafty, physical enough to get open. And
I think
he's not going to beat man coverage.
Late career Jason Witten is probably the best way to describe him. Yeah, I mean, whenever you brought up late career Jason Witten, I think of nothing but like stop routes where he just turns around and catches it and gets like 1.5 yak.
Yeah, that's what it is. 1.8 yak per reception. Like,
yeah. That is, but he's always open. Jason Witten could have 15 catches and have 17 yards of yak.
Yeah.
Like,
it's about right.
I loved it.
And then Austin Hooper, I think, is pretty similar at this point. Maybe he gives you a little more vertical juice, but like not much. I think that they are very similar.
If you asked me if Austin Hooper was still in the league, I would have said no.
I mean, he's still there. He's still
doing
here,
boy.
But the thing that's interesting in their tight end room is Jaheim Bell. So Jaheim Bell was at South Carolina.
Out of Florida State.
Yep. He was at South Carolina, and he was used as like a tight end / running back. And then he transferred to Florida State to get a little more shine last year. Got it, but I'll be honest, his tape at Florida State wasn't that impressive. But he's been flashing like crazy at New England's OTAs. And I think like I've started to see more of his South Carolina pop up on my timeline and stuff. And it's like, oh, I was not familiar with your game. Like,
yeah,
he might have been a steal in the 7th round for them. Like an absolute steal. If what he was doing at South Carolina is more of what we're going to see in the NFL, as opposed to what he was doing at Florida State. Because Florida State, there was a lot of stuff where it was just like, it seemed weird in their offense sometimes. Like they had all these transfers, all these guys who, came there to get more exposure.
Florida State was just
so they needed the football. And
speaking of Florida State, we didn't even talk about Jordan Travis backing up Aaron Rodgers, which I think was a huge pick for them in the late rounds for the Jets. I meant to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't think that highly of Jordan Travis, but I mean, where they got him, that's like, sure, you take the flyer.
I mean, I think he could be like I think he could bring in a Dak Prescott or who's the quarterback for the 49ers? Brock Purdy, rookie year bump, where I think he could come in and run your offense the way he needs to and have a great rookie year. And then from there, it just goes on developing to continue to be good.
See, I just don't see the arm talent of those guys. Like I see like more like a Tyler.
Brock Purdy's arm talent is not good.
It's better. It's better than Jordan Travis, I think.
You think?
I think so.
I don't know. Brock Purdy is very cerebral and knows the reads and knows where to put the ball, but I wouldn't.
I'm not saying Brock Purdy has above average arm talent. I just think it's better than Jordan Travis.
Oh. We can agree to disagree, I suppose.
Like I think of Jordan Travis is like a Tyler Huntley. I think that's where his career is going to be.
I feel like that's a little disrespectful. But he was a 6th-round pick, so.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. But we're talking about the Patriots.
Patriots.
Let's get to their
Drake
O-line.
May. Oh.
Micah
O-line.
Mwinu. I mean, I think he's a good offensive tackle. I think he's a great offensive guard. He's going to be playing offensive tackle across, and I think he'll be just fine there. But I think he would be like an all-pro guard. He has been an all-pro guard in this league. Chuks Okorafor. This is a stopgap at left tackle, I think. I mean, probably a downgrade from Trent Brown, who you had last year, but like more available. So a bit of an upgrade in some aspects because you're not constantly worried about whether he's going to go down. He's fine there. You're always going to be wanting more, I think, but it's good enough for the time being. At center, you got David Andrews, who's been a Patriot forever, and he'll just keep plugging along here. Some issues in pass protection with him, but he's a veteran. He's smart. He's cerebral. He will sort out the line of scrimmage and get done what needs to get done there. I think his pass protection would go up a lot if Sidey So could improve his pass protection. Sidey So is a fun run blocker, man. Like he will run people down. Out of Eastern Michigan, man. His Maction tape was so fun to watch coming out of Eastern Michigan.
I love Maction.
But he was on a team that ran the football like 90% of the time. So pass pro is...
How was our boy Cole Strange last year after our buddy called it
Michael Rockman
draft?
Mr. NFL
Michael
draft.
Rockman, Mr. NFL draft.
He had a solid year. I mean, not great, but I mean, not bad for all intensive purposes being a rookie, I think that he's going to get better this year, which could also help David Andrews in that pass protection aspect. But there are question marks all over this O-line, a lot of ifs, a lot of maybes, a lot of hopefully they can get better. I really like the guy they picked out at Texas A&M, Layden Robinson. I think he's a developmental guy, but a lot to like there. I'm not sure Antonio Mafi is a guy who's going to be able to stick in this league just because I think his feet are stuck in cement too often. He's big, heavy brawler, but he can't really move that well. And I just think that's going to be detrimental unless he can drop weight, which he dropped a ton of weight his senior year at UCLA already. I just think he might be a bit too heavy-footed, but weirder things have happened. We'll see how this O-line ends up shaking out. Like you always have some injuries here and there and stuff like that. Guys get opportunities. Maybe he'll get a shot with something like that. But ultimately, I think you got Mwinu, Okorafor, Sidey So, David Andrews, and Cole Strange starting. And there are worlds where that can work and be fine. But I do think that there is a desire to get better here. And I forgot my note here. Cole Strange is expected to start the season on the PUP list with a knee injury. So there's your chance for Antonio Mafi or maybe Jake Andrews to kick in at center and David Andrews to kick over to guard, or even Layden Robinson to get in the lineup.
Yeah. So looking at this roster, I mean, this is definitely one of the, I would say, weaker rosters in the AFC. What does this team have to do to actually compete and make the playoffs in this gauntlet of an AFC?
This defense needs to eat. Defense needs to eat. No line needs to be serviceable.
Yeah. And so when we look at the offense, you don't think Drake May is the guy year one?
I have a hard time justifying putting him behind this O-line with these weapons.
Yeah.
Personally. I just do not think it's going to be good to do that. I think Jacoby Brissett gives this chance the best chance to win this year, I think.
So 3rd overall pick, this team starts out 1-8. Can Gerard Mayo get away with not playing Drake May?
To me,
being
diamond hands.
You gotta think about
diamond hands.
Gotta think about Patriots, 6 Super Bowls. They won the division 17 years in a row or whatever it was. You're 1-8. you picked a quarterback 3rd overall, and everybody with a brain can be like, hey, we don't want to throw this kid into a bad situation. Like, think about the future, look forward. But can you truly get away with not playing Drake May if what I think is going to happen is you're going to be 1-8, 2-6 halfway through the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be really hard to not play him. But I think if you want to ensure the best chance that he is your future, you don't play him because I'm not sure this is a developmental atmosphere. I'm not sure this offensive roster is good enough to give him a chance to survive. And that's when bad habits start to form. And especially in year 1 of Gerard Mayo's tenure as head coach, there's 1 year where he can get away with it. It's this year.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, Boston's also a weird town because they just keep winning. Like, they're coming off a Celtics championship.
Yeah.
Like, do they pressure this team enough to be like, we want Drake May? If they know that there's no hope other than we just want to see this kid? Because, like, we're talking about a sports city where the 15 to 30-year-olds have never really seen I'm not a tanking team necessarily, because, like, I don't think they'll be tanking with Jacoby Brissett, but, like, just an up-and-coming team. Like, the closest thing you could say is, like, the Celtics when they took Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But what was that, 2012, 2013?
Yeah, no, like I said, it's going to be really hard to do that. They're going to be clamoring for his job on the radio. They're going to be calling him out in the newspaper. You know, it's going to suck if they're in that position.
Yeah.
But I don't think that should change the aspect unless you feel like your O-line is playing well enough and your receivers are executing the offense well enough for Drake May to truly develop within the snaps. I think it's a bad decision.
Yeah, you got to have the diamond hands. I agree with you. I mean, I think you go out, you maybe get one more offensive lineman to shore this O-line up next year. Go get another receiver. Hopefully Jalen Polk can be a solid 2 to 3 guy. Maybe you get a T. Higgins. Maybe you get a Brandon Ayuk. There'll be guys in the draft next year.
Dude.
Yeah, like there are scenarios where like you can have a good wide receiver room next year. You locked up Ramondre Stevenson for the time being. Antonio Gibson's a fine too. Maybe go out and draft a number. Like there's ways to drastically improve this team next year. So it just comes down to can you leave Drake May on the bench for a year, which I think Drake May gives this team a better opportunity to win. But is it worth it when you're talking about 2 wins versus 6 wins? I don't think so.
To me, I look at the Drake May as a prospect. He is prime to fall into and get stuck in bad habits because he can get away with stuff that other people can't. And because of that, if he's in a bad situation,
this is coming from a Bears fan.
He's going to lean on.
You've seen this before, haven't you?
Yeah. I just saw 3 years of it in Justin Fields. Like he has special abilities that will allow him to keep you in games and do stuff, but it's going to be really hard to stop leaning on those. And those the way that you lean on those is things that are not ideal at the quarterback position. It's saying
you could also argue
I'm gonna go do some crazy Josh Allen stuff that is why Josh Allen gets frowned upon at times, right?
You could also, I mean, this never happens. Like people don't talk about it, but if you're the head coach, if you're PR, whatever you are for the Patriots, you could also stand on the table next year and be like, Drake May is better than any quarterback getting drafted next year. Like,
Yeah.
we know what we have, and we're not going to put him in a bad situation. So we're just going to keep him last for a year.
You want to get wild? Throw Joe Milton out there.
Yeah. Oh. I might wreck the league. I might wreck the league. If you've seen this man throw a football, I mean, they might not even want Drake May anymore.
All right, let's talk this defense personnel a little bit. Christian Barmore is pretty underrated D tackle in this league. You know, I mean, not based on paycheck anymore. He just got paid, but he's probably doesn't get talked about enough. He's a guy who can push the pocket, a guy who can defend the run well. He's really just a well-rounded defensive tackle who can create havoc up the middle. Devon Godshaw, really a pretty impressive nose tackle. Bill Belichick's been on record saying this guy might be the best defensive tackle on our team in the past, one of the best defensive tackles in the league, but his stats never show it out because he's a nose tackle. Love your nose tackles. They get no credit. They get no statistical love, but they matter a lot for what your linebackers do. Dietrich Weiss missed some time last year with an injury, played through some injuries. I think Dietrich Weiss is a animal. He's a dog. This is a dog. This is a dude who just goes out there and punches people in the mouth and does his job over and over and over. I like Dietrich Weiss way more than I should, just because watching his tape is just like, it's like watching a heavyweight boxer, man. It's just fun. Then at the edge position, like I think this D tackle room, they have good depth, good stuff there. Keon White.
Is this the same Tristan Hill that the Cowboys drafted?
Yeah, it is.
Trash.
Well, I mean, he's D tackle 8 or 7.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't realize he went to the Patriots. I don't know how he got re-signed. Dude had freak like measurables. It just like
that's why
didn't care about football.
The NFL will give you chance after chance after chance if you have freak athleticism and measurables and draft pedigree. And he's got both.
Dude, I could have swore that dude was gonna be an all-pro.
He had the talent.
I just saw the name and I was like, is that the same guy?
The edge room, Keon White, dude can also play some D tackle. Dude is a house. He has a brick house. He's still learning some stuff at football. He's still fairly raw to football, but on the D line, that's something I can live with. And I love this dude's tape. He is physical. He is big. He is strong, and he is fast and explosive. And Ferdy Jennings showed some nice stuff against the run too, and some nice little explosiveness there. On tape, I was actually surprised how often I did notice Anthony Jennings. And then you got Matt Judon coming back from a torn bicep, not an injury that you're overly worried about with age. You know, it's like if it was a knee or something, you'd worry more. But at 32 years old, coming off the torn bicep, I think he should be able to bounce back from that just fine.
Those red sleeves pop on film always.
Oh, yeah, they do. I mean, yeah. Judon is still a good football player, very technically sound football player. I think he's going to come back just fine from that injury. And then Josh Uche is just he's just speeding off the edge, man. He's just he flies off that edge. He doesn't give you much in the run. He doesn't give you much in anything but as like a wide edge rusher, but that's his role. He knows it. He does it well. At linebacker, Juwan Bentley and Jelani Tavai are fun. Man, they fly around the field. If there's one way to describe this defense, it's that they fly downhill constantly. And these two guys are the definition of that. They are finding ways to make plays on the football, get their hands on the football. They're good football players, man. Like, they're well coached. You can see it. And that's where I come back to just the little question in the back of my head of like, what happens when you take the greatest defensive coach of all time and show him the door to a defense?
Yeah.
In the cornerback room, surprisingly strong considering the names here. Like Jonathan Jones has been good for a long time, but like he doesn't get the recognition that some corners in this league get. And then you get Christian Gonzalez coming back. Marcus Jones is expected to be a starter here, and he only played 4% of the snaps last year. I believe he had some injuries, but with some of the snaps I saw for him were very nice. And Christian Gonzalez was off to a really nice start to the season last year before suffering that injury. I mean, in those games, he had 80 PFF coverage grade, which is hard to do. Only allowed 160 yards as a rookie. Like those are impressive rookie numbers. And then at safety, some of the most interesting safety play in the league on this team last year. Kyle Duggar is just an animal, man, coming downhill, coming and punch you in the mouth, knock you out. Jabril Peppers can do the same thing, but he can also play that center fielder role. And then Marte Mapu, I'm not sure what exactly the plan is with him here. He didn't play a ton of snaps last year, kind of a linebacker safety hybrid. I'm sure they'll find a role for him. Not sure exactly where. Jalen Hawkins is not the guy I was just thinking. I was thinking of a different guy. I can't talk about Jalen Hawkins. I don't know enough about him. But anyways, it's either I say that flat out or I start to make something up. And if I make something up, someone's going to call me out on it. And I shouldn't do that anyways. So I'm just going to say I was thinking of someone else.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot to like about this team if you look at them as building a team. Because I don't look at the same thinking they can compete. I mean, we've been talking all this whole offseason about how brittle this AFC is. And when we look at the win totals, we have over under at 4.5, minus 162 for the over, but plus 132 for the under. I might like that under, but like as crazy as it sounds, it's like I think this team could be one of the best teams against the spread in the league and only win 2 to 3 games or 4 games and still hit that under plus 132. And then from there, I mean, you're not going to take them to win the division at plus 980. You're not going to take them to make the playoffs win the division at plus 2,400, make the playoffs at plus 980, Super Bowl champs 9-1, Super Bowl champion 18-1. You're not going to do any of that.
Mm-hmm. The only bet here is the under.
Yeah. And I think this team realistically can go 3-15 or 3-14. And you're looking at next year being like, okay, we're solid. Like they could be like the Lions of 4 years ago, to where you're like, we have the pieces, we have everything we need. We just had to bring it all together.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point earlier, I think this is a team that they add a left tackle and a receiver, I start to feel pretty good about.
Yeah.
Like they have the versatility on this roster. They have talent on this roster. But it's just some key pieces are still missing that are tough to overcome. And you throw that in with the normal variability of an NFL season that comes with injuries and guys missing games and
having the diamond wrong.
And it's like,
I think holding on to Drake May for as long as you can is going to do nothing but help this team in the future.
I agree.
Like the Chiefs got away with it because Alex Smith was a MVP candidate.
That's the thing, though.
Patrick Mahomes' rookie year.
Does Jacoby Brissett surpass the Alex Smith line of being able to justify to your fan base? Exactly. No. That's your question to me earlier. Like, how do you do that? It's really hard to do. It's really hard to expect to do.
Yeah, Jacoby Brissett's not going to do enough to where you're going to be like, I think Drake May is the best quarterback on that roster, but starting the best quarterback on the roster isn't always the best thing to do for the team in the long run.
Yeah, no, and it's like it's almost like if the front office could just come out and say, our offense sucks. We want this kid to be good. He's not playing, but they can't do that, right? Agents would tear them apart for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But, okay, we'll run through the schedule real fast. We both have the Bengals week 1. I have the Seahawks week 2. Q has the Patriots. We both have the Jets week 3. Week 4, we both have the 49ers. Week 5, we both have the Dolphins. Week 6, we both have the Texans. Week 7, we both have the Jaguars. We both have the Patriots winning week 8. I have the Patriots. Oh, we both have the Patriots winning week 9 versus Tennessee. Also my under bet of the year. We both have the Bears week 10. We both have the Rams week 11. We both have the Dolphins week 12. We both have the Colts week 13. I have the Cardinals week 15. Q has the Patriots week 15. I have the Patriots versus the Bills week 16. Q has the Bills in that game. I have the Patriots versus the Chargers. Let me give I'm going to give that to the Chargers. I don't think they went back-to-back games there.
Supercharged.
Okay. And then we both have the Bills week 8.
All right. So that puts them at 3-14 for you and 4-13 for me. Overall,
so we both have the under.
Got 3 teams at 10-7. Let's go. Tiebreaker's going to matter.
Yeah. So I have Jets 11-6. Oh, that can't be right. Yeah, it can. I got confused. 11-6 for the Jets, 10-7 for the Dolphins, 11-6 for the Bills. I don't know where the tiebreakers line up for that, but we have finished the AFC. Let's look at the AFC playoffs here real quick.
It's going to be wild.
So I have Texans, Bengals, Jets, Chiefs as our first 4 seeds, with the Bills, Ravens, Dolphins being the 3 wild card teams.
Or the Chargers, Colts.
Or Chargers, Colts, yeah.
However tiebreakers play out there.
Yeah. So, however tiebreakers play out there. And then Mr. Quentin has the Bengals winning the AFC with the Texans, Chiefs,
And,
Jets.
One
Jets,
of the
Bills,
Bills or
Dolphins.
Dolphins winning as the 4 seed.
And then also all those teams competing for a wild card with the Chargers.
Yeah.
So
And the Ravens have a wild card.
So yeah, we gotta figure out. We'll have to put out our playoff teams for the 1 to 7.
We can figure out the tiebreakers, I'm sure.
Yeah, we can just go off the cuff for tiebreakers and not even go off records for who we want in our graphics, but we can post those on socials. Our 7 playoff teams for the AFC here in the next couple of days. I think we can manage that.
Yeah, probably.
So, is there anybody we can't sleep on in the AFC? Because it's like we look at the bottom of our lists and it's Titans, Patriots, Broncos, Raiders. I guess kind of
this top heavy. You have to not sleep on an NFC team. Like,
yeah,
not this top heavy. That's the wrong word. But this competitive. You can't. The only teams you can really sleep on are the Raiders, Titans, Patriots, or Broncos here.
Yeah, and I would even put the Raiders in that conversation. I mean, for me, it's like I'll sleep on the Titans, Patriots, Broncos. I have the Raiders at 7-10, and I think they can easily go 10-7.
Yeah,
and they're my third to last team in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, we're not sleeping on an NFC team. We can't
AFC
one of these teams.
Yeah. I mean, I will fall asleep happily at night with the Titans, Patriots, Broncos in this AFC.
Dude, it is. This AFC imbalance might be like the largest we've ever seen this year.
I wouldn't say imbalance because there's only 3 or 4 teams out of it.
No, I mean imbalance relative to the NFC.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it is pretty ludicrous.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the AFC is going to come down to, can you beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Because you look at any AFC team and you're like, I like them in a Super Bowl matchup with any NFC contender. But at the end of the day, can they beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs?
Yeah. That's what it has to be, right? It's been 2 straight years, 3 out of like however many years straight he's been to the Super Bowl.
Well, he's been to the Super Bowl, what?
4 straight?
No. because the Joe Burrow year. He's
Oh,
been
yeah,
4 out of
5.
4 out of 5, but he's been to the AFC Championship every year. He's been a starter.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
mean,
the road goes through him.
it has to.
Yeah. And imagine if he was in the NFC right now. It's like they're a lot to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They might be a lot to go to the
Easy
Super
as
Bowl in
that.
the AFC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Caleb Williams, please be that.
Oh, Caleb Williams. I mean, I'm calling it Bears Chiefs Super Bowl right now.
Boom. Lock it in.
Locking it in. Well, we're off next week for 4th of July. And then what are we doing first for the NFC?
I'm thinking we jump into either the North or the East.
I say North. It's a lot more fun.
It's Bears time, baby. Let's go. I will try to get a guest for the
Just don't do
Lions.
Okay.
Lions.
I would love a Lions guest.
Yeah.
I'm not. I won't do a Packers guest. I'll boycott.
Yeah, I'll work on getting a Lions guest for 2 weeks from now.
Perfect. We can get a Bears guest too. If you want to get Caleb Williams on, that's fine with me.
Honestly, it's selfish, but I want to talk Bears. I don't want to listen to someone talk Bears.
What if we get Caleb Williams?
Oh, well, that would be great. But I bet he's booked up.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll put a word into his agents. Yeah. All right. So we're sleeping on the AFC.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are heavily sleeping on the AFC.
I concur 100%. Well, that'll be it. Hopefully y'all stuck around for that 3 hours and 3.5 hours. Probably our longest podcast ever by far.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we ran double the time on the Bills talk than we planned, but it was awesome. So great division. Anthony Prohaska, absolutely phenomenal guest, legendary guest, probably the best guest we ever had. Yeah, right up.
He's up there. Still love you, Michael Rockman. But yeah,
great show, man.
Great show. That'll be it.
Remember, if you are listening,
like, subscribe. Let us know who's winning the NFC North.
And if you want video content to go with it, I do chop all of these up into shorter segments and add all 22 film in. So go check out our YouTube page to find that.
Yeah, Shaving Points is the video for YouTube.
Yeah, Shaving Points podcast, Shaving Points. It'll pop up either way. You'll see the little straight razor logo will be there. Boom. There's
absolutely. Everything. So yeah, and then we're sleeping on the AFC. We will see y'all the week after 4th of July. And who's winning the AFC? Chiefs. Go Chiefs. Chiefs Kingdom. I'm with you. 3-peat on the horizon.
It's happening. All right. Adios.
You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.